close your eyes, take a deep, slow breath, and let the weight of the modern world slide off your shoulders. The glowing screens, the constant hum of notifications, the racing thoughts of tomorrow, let them all fade into the background. Here there is only the soft, rhythmic crackle of a hearth fire and the deep, steady pulse of history. Imagine yourself in a small timber-framed cottage in the English countryside, somewhere in the mid-16th century. It is late autumn. The sun has long since dipped below the horizon, leaving the world wrapped in a velvety ink-black blanket of night. Outside, the wind howls softly across the rolling, frost-bitten fields of the manor, but inside you are cocooned in warmth. The air smells of wood smoke, dried herbs hanging from the rafters, and the faint, earthy scent of damp wool. This is a time when the world was much smaller, dictated not by clocks, but by the rising and setting of the sun and the seasonal rhythm of the soil. You are not a king or a queen, nor a merchant of great standing. You are the heartbeat of the Tudor era, an average peasant, a tiller of the earth, a witness to a world defined by its simplicity and its deep, ancestral connections to the land. Why do we look back at the Tudors? Perhaps because in their struggle for survival, their rigid hierarchies, and their profound devotion to the cycles of life, we find something that resonates with our own quiet desires for stability. As the fire flickers, casting long, dancing shadows against the wattle and daub walls, the distance between your life and theirs begins to dissolve. Tonight, we aren't just observing history, we are breathing it. We are stepping into the boots of those who walked these paths centuries before us, feeling the cold air on our skin and the warmth of the hearth in our bones. Listen closely. Can you hear the distant creak of the cottage door? The settling of the thatch roof as the night grows deeper? You are safe here. There is nothing to do, nowhere to be, and no demands to meet. For the next 2 hours, the only thing that matters is the story unfolding within the glow of the embers. We will walk through the misty mornings of the harvest, sit by the community well, and understand the intricate unseen bonds that held a village together when the world was vast, wild, and mysterious. This journey is yours to take. Let the storytelling guide you through the complexities of a life lived in service to the land, a life governed by ancient traditions, and a life that, despite its hardships, held a profound and beautiful dignity. The channel Sleepy History with Kevin is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. The first light of dawn is a pale, hesitant sliver of grey filtering through the small leaded glass window of your cottage. The fire from the night before has dwindled to a bed of glowing ember-red coals, radiating a gentle, persistent heat that clings to the room. In the stillness of the early morning, the silence is profound, broken only by the rhythmic, steady breathing of your family sleeping on the straw pallets nearby. This is the hour of transition. The world outside is waking up, but the frost still clings to the thatch, turning the eaves into crystal-tipped edges. You rise slowly, your movements heavy but practiced. You wrap yourself in your woolen tunic, the fabric coarse and familiar against your skin. Every piece of clothing you own tells a story of labour, the sheep that were shorn, the wool that was spun by hand, and the dyes derived from roots and berries gathered in the nearby woods. In the Tudor era, the family unit was the singular, unbreakable engine of survival. Life was not measured by individual ambition, but by the contribution of every hand to the common pot. Your partner is already stirring, their eyes opening to meet yours in the dim light. There is no need for conversation yet. The tasks for the day are etched into the rhythm of the seasons. There is the hearth to be tended, the small garden plot to be checked, and the livestock to be cared for before the sun truly claims the sky. You step toward the fireplace, crouching low to rake the ashes. With a few dried twigs and a steady breath, the fire begins to bloom again. The scent of breakfast, a simple pottage made of oats water, and perhaps a handful of peas or onions begins to fill the room. It is a humble meal, yet it provides the steady energy required for the long hours of labour that lie ahead. The village is quiet, save for the occasional lowing of a cow or the distant, sharp cry of a crow circling the manor fields. As you step outside for a moment, the air is sharp and crisp, biting at your cheeks. You look out over the landscape, rolling hills patched with strips of farmland, the distant silhouette of the village church tower, and the dense, dark line of the forest that marks the edge of the world you know. This landscape is a living map of your existence. You know every dip in the terrain, every stone wall and every path. The land belongs to the lord of the manor, but in a very real sense it belongs to you as well. You are the one who knows its temper, its fertility and its limitations. Life here is defined by the commons, the shared meadows where your family grazes their few animals, and the open fields where you and your neighbours work in tandem. There is an unspoken agreement in the village, a web of mutual reliance. If the roof of a neighbour's cottage is damaged by the autumn gales, you go to help. When the harvest reaches its peak, the entire village moves as one, an orchestrated dance of scythes and rakes. It is a life of shared burden, but also one of shared belonging. You are never truly alone, and in the quiet of this morning that knowledge provides a deep underlying sense of comfort. The morning mist begins to lift, revealing the towering spire of the parish church at the centre of the village. For the people of this Tudor hamlet, the church is far more than just a place of prayer. It is the physical and spiritual anchor of your entire existence. It is the only building constructed of sturdy stone, a testament to its permanence in a world of wood, mud, and thatch. As you walk along the dirt path toward the fields, your eyes naturally drift toward the church tower. Its presence brings a sense of order to the chaos of the natural world. The bell, when it tolls, serves as the only clock you truly need. It marks the start of the workday, the hours of rest, and the turning points of the liturgical calendar. In a time before wristwatches and digital reminders, the rhythm of the church bells is the rhythm of your life. The social hierarchy of the village is as clearly defined as the stone walls that border the manor lands. At the top sits the lord of the manor, whose authority radiates outward from the manor house, a building of imposing comfort compared to the humble cottages of the peasants. Yet despite this distance, the relationship is one of complex interdependence. You pay your tithes and provide your labour, and in return you look to the manor for a degree of protection and the administration of the manorial court where local disputes are settled. But there is a deeper, more personal connection found within the church walls. Inside, the air is cool and smells of beeswax candles and damp stone. Here the boundaries of class seem to blur, if only for a few moments. Whether you're a villein or a free tenant, you stand on the same uneven flagstones. The stories told from the pulpit are the stories of the world, tales of virtue, suffering, and the promise of a peaceful afterlife. These stories provide a narrative framework for your own struggles. They teach that hardship is not merely random, but part of a grander, divine design. This perspective is crucial to your peace of mind. When the harvest fails or the winter is particularly cruel, the belief that there is a purpose to your suffering acts as a protective shield for your spirit. You find solace in the rituals, the slow rhythmic chanting, the familiar sight of the stained glass filtering light into colourful patterns on the floor, and the community of faces around you. You know each person by name, the miller, the blacksmith, the weaver, the women who trade secrets at the village well. As you return to your labour in the field, the knowledge that you are a small but essential cog in a vast divinely ordered machine grants you a surprising amount of mental ease. You are not adrift in the universe. You belong to this village, to this manor, and to this faith. You are a part of a lineage that stretches back generations, and you are playing your part in ensuring that the future continues. The weight of your work, though physical, is lighter because you carry it in the company of those who share your reality, under the watchful gaze of the history that preceded you and the future that will follow. The world may be demanding, but it is also profoundly reassuringly stable. By midday, the sun has reached its zenith, casting short shadows across the tilled earth. The labour is physically demanding, but it is steady and grounding. In the cottage garden, a small, carefully tended patch of land enclosed by a wattle fence, the real magic of daily life happens. Here, away from the wider fields of grain, your partner and the village elders cultivate a diverse array of plants that serve as both sustenance and medicine. You step into this garden as the shadows lengthen slightly in the afternoon. The air is thick with the scent of sage, rosemary, and hyssop to the untrained eye. This might look like a simple vegetable plot, but to you it is an apothecary and a pantry combined. You know exactly which leaves to crush to soothe a tired muscle, and which roots to boil into a tea when the winter chill threatens to settle in the chest. This knowledge is passed down through generations, a quiet, whispered wisdom that ensures the survival of your family when a physician is a luxury far beyond your reach. The diet of a Tudor peasant is dictated by the seasons, a cycle of fasting and feasting. Today the centrepiece is pottage, a thick, hearty stew that simmers over the hearth for hours. It is made from whatever the earth has yielded: leeks, onions, cabbage, and occasionally a piece of salted pork or bacon if the harvest was kind. The base is thickened with oats or barley, creating a dish that is warm, filling, and deeply comforting. There is a primal satisfaction in eating a meal that you helped coax from the ground with your own hands. You know the history of every vegetable in the bowl. Bread is the true staff of life. It is not the pristine white loaf of the wealthy, but a dark, coarse maslin bread, a blend of rye and wheat. It is dense and chewy, providing the stamina needed for the hard days of weeding and harvesting. As you sit by the hearth to eat, the simple act of breaking bread becomes a moment of gratitude. The warmth of the fire, the taste of the herbs, and the sound of your family eating together create a sanctuary. In these moments, the complexities of the outside world, the politics of the court, the shifting allegiances of the nobility, feel like distant thunder. They do not reach into this small, humble space. Here the focus is on the immediate, the tangible, and the life-sustaining. You learn to read the signs of the weather by the behavior of the birds, and you understand the soil by its texture between your fingers. It is a life of profound intimacy with the world, where every meal is a reminder of your survival, and every herb is a testament to the generosity of the land. The quiet rhythm of preparing food, the patient tending of the garden, and the simple joy of sharing a warm bowl at the end of a long day are the threads that weave the fabric of your contented existence. All stories on this channel, Sleepy History with Kevin, are fictional. Thoughtfully crafted around historical themes and inspired by real events, figures, and periods, reimagined for engaging storytelling. The content does not represent real individuals, actual events, documented cases, any resemblance to real people, animals, or events is purely coincidental. The heavy toil of the week is punctuated by the rare golden reprieve of the village fair and the feast days. In the Tudor calendar, these are not just dates, they are the lungs of the village, allowing the community to breathe after months of back-breaking labour. As the summer sun begins to wane, preparations for the harvest festival begin, bringing a different kind of energy to the quiet lanes. You find yourself in the village square, a rare sight of colour in a world often dominated by earth tones. The air is filled with the faint, sweet scent of roasting apples and the crisp, clean smell of freshly cut hay. You see your neighbours, people you have worked alongside in the furrows, now dressed in their best linen shirts and colourful aprons. There is laughter here, a sound that cuts through the routine and signals that for a moment the struggle for survival has been paused. Young men engage in friendly tests of strength, tossing logs or engaging in spirited, though good-natured, wrestling matches. In the corner, a local musician plays a lively tune on a wooden flute, its high, clear notes dancing above the chatter. Children run through the crowd. their faces smeared with the juice of late summer berries, their joy infectious. It is in these moments that you truly understand the heart of the village. The social bonds that hold you together are not just forged in the fields, but here in the shared experience of play and music. As you lean against a sturdy oak tree, watching the festivities, you feel a profound sense of belonging. The fears of the future and the regrets of the past fall away, replaced by the simple, undeniable reality of the present. You are part of something larger than yourself. You are a thread in a tapestry that has been weaving itself for centuries. The music softens, blending into the background hum of the village, and you find your eyelids growing heavy with the contentment of a day well spent. If you are finding peace in these stories and want to keep this journey through history going, please consider subscribing to the channel. By hitting that notification bell, you ensure that you'll never miss our next escape into the past, helping us continue to bring these quiet moments of reflection to your nightly routine. Your support allows this community to grow, and I am so grateful to have you here on this peaceful journey with me. The sun begins to dip low, casting long amber fingers of light across the grass. The festivities are winding down, but the warmth of the day stays with you. As the cool evening air settles in, the transition back to the quiet of your cottage feels natural, a gentle closing of a chapter before the stars take their place in the velvet sky above. You walk home slowly, the echoes of the flute still playing faintly in your mind, carrying the happiness of the village into the quiet sanctuary of your own home. The night has fully reclaimed the village. Outside, the world has vanished into an impenetrable veil of darkness, leaving your cottage as the only island of light and warmth. Inside, the hearth remains the centre of your universe. The flames have settled into a steady, hypnotic pulse, casting deep amber shadows that stretch and shrink against the timber-framed walls. This is the time of the night tale, the hour when the day's labour is done, and the mind is free to wander into the realms of myth and memory. You sit on a rough-hewn bench, your hands resting on your knees, feeling the lingering fatigue of the day melt away into the heat of the fire. The scent of the logs, oak and birch, is rich and grounding. There is a specific kind of silence that descends at night in the Tudor countryside. It is a heavy velvet quiet, broken only by the crackle of a stray spark, or the faint ghostly rustle of wind against the thatched roof. It is in this silence that your family gathers, drawn together by the instinct to protect one another from the vast, unknown darkness beyond the door. In the glow of the embers, someone begins to speak. It isn't a grand speech or a lecture, but a soft, rhythmic recounting of the old legends, stories that have been passed down for generations like heirlooms. They tell of the forest spirits, the green men who watch over the ancient oaks, and the mysterious figures who are said to walk the misted lanes when the moon is full. These stories are not told to frighten, but to explain the mysteries of the natural world. They give names to the wind that whistles through the eaves and the strange rustlings in the garden at midnight. Listening to these tales, you feel the boundaries of your own reality expand. The world is not just what you plough or harvest. It is a place filled with unseen currents and ancient stories. You learn about the importance of respecting the woods, of leaving a small offering of grain for the wild creatures, and of never mocking the deeper spirits of the land. It is a philosophy of humility, a recognition that you are merely a guest in a landscape that was here long before you and will remain long after you are gone. As the storyteller's voice grows lower, slower, and more melodic, the details of the room begin to blur. The firelight pulses like a steady heartbeat. You imagine yourself in those forests of legend, walking beneath the canopy of giant silver-barked trees, breathing in the scent of damp moss and pine needles. The fear of the unknown is replaced by a sense of wonder. You are perfectly safe. You are warm. You are surrounded by the people who know you best, and the stories they share are the golden threads that keep your spirit tethered to the earth. The rhythmic cadence of the narration combined with the low, persistent crackle of the wood creates a protective cocoon around you. You feel your shoulders drop. You feel your jaw unclench. Every word spoken is like a gentle stroke against the tension of your mind. There is nowhere else you need to be. History is not a collection of dates in a dusty book. It is these voices, these fires, these moments of shared mystery in the quiet dark of a Tudor night. Let the story continue to flow around you, carrying you deeper into the tranquil currents of sleep. The transition of the seasons is not something you merely observe, it is something you feel in your very marrow. As the air grows thinner and the sky turns the colour of hammered pewter, you know that the time of preparation has arrived. The lush green of the fields is fading, yielding to the brittle golden browns of late autumn. The wind, once a gentle companion in the heat of summer, now carries a sharper edge, whistling with a lonely, insistent tone through the cracks in the wattle and daub walls. Winter in the Tudor countryside is a formidable presence. It is a time that demands respect. You spend your days securing the home against the encroaching cold. The thatching on the roof is inspected and repaired with thick bundles of straw, ensuring that the warmth of the hearth remains trapped within. Every family member has a role to play in this great, quiet fortification. The granaries are checked, the dried herbs are bundled tightly under the rafters, and the livestock are moved to the safety of the lean-to shelters, where their own warmth will help to fend off the frost. There is a strange, melancholy beauty in this season of stripping back. As the leaves fall, the landscape opens up, revealing the skeletal shapes of the ancient trees and the hidden contours of the land. You see the world as it truly is, quiet, dormant, and waiting. There is no urgency now. The frantic pace of the harvest is behind you. The work that remains is methodical, steady, and repetitive. You spend hours chopping wood for the long nights, the sound of the axe hitting the log ringing out like a slow metallic heartbeat against the stillness of the air. This is a time for reflection. As the light retreats earlier each day, the evenings grow longer, giving you more time to sit by the fire and consider the cycle of life. You think of the grain you planted, the bread it became, and the energy it gave you to continue the cycle for another year. You realize that you're an extension of the earth itself. Your energy is its energy. Your rest is its rest. The frost begins to lace the window panes with delicate crystalline patterns, turning the world outside into a blurred, ethereal landscape of silver and grey. You watch these patterns grow, fascinated by the silent, intricate geometry of the cold inside. The fire is your most precious possession. You feed it with care, mindful of every ember. The warmth it provides is not just physical. It is a shield against the vast, indifferent expanse of the winter night. You feel a profound sense of peace in this forced confinement. There is no expectation to travel, no pressure to perform. You are where you belong, in the sanctuary of your home, with the rhythm of the season acting as a gentle sedative. The world is slowing down, inviting you to do the same. As the wind rattles the door, you pull your cloak tighter, feeling the deep, cozy security of your surroundings. You are safe, you are prepared, and in the quiet of the coming winter, you are ready to let the world drift away into the stillness of a long, restorative rest. As the winter sun retreats and the long blue hours of twilight stretch across the floor, the interior of the cottage transforms into a workspace of quiet, rhythmic industry. With the livestock settled and the hearth fire stoked to a steady golden glow, the family settles into the gentle art of craft. The air is thick with the scent of raw wool and freshly cut willow, and the only sounds are the soft melodic whir of the spinning wheel and the occasional rustle of straw. This is the time for the hands to speak. You pull the raw, oily wool through your fingers, feeling the coarse texture before it is spun into thread. There is a deep, meditative quality to this repetition, the constant circular motion, the consistent tension of the thread, the way the wool transforms under your touch. It is a slow, ancient process that requires patience. In the Tudor household, nothing is wasted. The wool from your own sheep is carded, spun, and eventually woven into the very garments that keep the winter chill at bay. Every stitch is a prayer for warmth, every spun thread a testament to survival. Others in the cottage are working with willow wreaths. weaving them into strong, flexible baskets that will hold the spring harvest. You watch the rhythmic bending of the wood, the way it yields to the weaver's steady pressure, creating intricate, interlocking patterns. There is no rush here. The light of the fire dances on the finished baskets, illuminating their simple, sturdy beauty. It is the work of a lifetime, a craft perfected through years of doing. This process of creation is a sanctuary for the mind. When your hands are busy with these simple, repetitive tasks, your thoughts have permission to drift. The worries of the day, the weight of the manna, the uncertainties of the future, they all dissolve into the rhythmic sound of the spinning wheel. You are fully present in the movement, grounded by the physical reality of the materials in your hands. You learn to listen to the fire, to the way the logs settle with a soft sigh, and to the breathing of those you love in the dim light. If you're feeling the gentle pull of sleep, or if this journey into the quiet rhythms of the past has brought a sense of calm to your evening, please remember to support this channel. A simple like or a subscribe helps us continue to craft these immersive, tranquil stories for your nightly routine. By joining our community, you become a part of the hearth we are building together, a space where history and peace meet to guide you toward a restful, dreamless slumber. Thank you for being a part of this quiet tradition. The fire glows brighter now, a comforting beacon in the middle of the dark. You feel the weight in your limbs, a pleasant heaviness that signals the body's readiness for rest. The spinning wheel slows, the last of the willow is tucked into place, and for a moment everyone sits in the shared, golden silence. It is a profound feeling of completeness. You have contributed your share to the survival of your kin. Your hands have moved with purpose, and now the house is still. The shadows on the wall seem to settle too, as if they are preparing to watch over you while you dream. Beyond the perimeter of the manor fields, where the fences crumble into moss-covered stone, lies the forest. To the modern mind, it might seem like a dark, daunting thicket, but to you it is a living, breathing cathedral, a place of immense power and ancient quiet. When the village falls into the deep slumber of the night, your thoughts often drift to the great gnarled oaks that stand as silent sentinels at the edge of your world. In the heart of these woods, time moves differently. The dense canopy, even in the depths of autumn, creates a world of perpetual twilight, where the air is always cool and carries the sharp, clean fragrance of damp earth and ancient pine. You know that deep within those shadows, there are hidden groves untouched by the plough or the axe. These are the places where the old ways still linger, where the deer move with silent grace through the ferns, and where the owls watch the world with golden, unblinking eyes. You imagine walking along the narrow, winding deer paths, your feet sinking into the thick carpet of leaves that have fallen for 1,000 years. There is no sound here except for the wind brushing against the canopy above, a sound like a soft, rhythmic exhaling. It is a place that demands silence. You don't go to the woods to conquer them. You go to witness them. You go to listen to the language of the rustling leaves and the distant, haunting call of a creature you cannot name. The forest is a reminder of how vast the world is, and how small you are in comparison. This is a humbling yet deeply soothing realization. It suggests that your daily struggles, while important to you, are part of a much larger, more enduring story. The forest has seen empires rise and fall. It has weathered storms that would have levelled your cottage, and yet it stands, constant and resilient. To connect with the forest is to tether your soul to something that will never cease to exist. As you lie in your bed, listening to the crackling fire, you allow your mind to wander into these woods. Visualize the silver moonlight filtering through the branches, painting the forest floor in shades of ethereal blue. Feel the stillness of the trees. They are sleeping too. The pulse of the woods is slowing, syncing with the rhythm of the earth itself. The mystery of the forest is not something to be solved, it is something to be felt, a gentle dark velvet that wraps around your consciousness. In this mental space, the boundaries of your physical form begin to dissolve. You are no longer just a person in a cottage. You are part of the forest, the wind and the moonlight. You feel the weight of your eyelids, the gradual surrender of your muscles to the soft straw of your palate. The woods are quiet, the village is still, and you are drifting on the gentle, slow-moving tide of a timeless night. Let the image of the ancient trees hold you as you sink deeper into the embrace of sleep, where the only thing that exists is the peace of the wild, undisturbed by the rush of the world you left behind. The heart of the Tudor cottage is not just the fire, but the invisible thread that binds the generations together. As you rest in the soft, flickering light, you think of the ones who came before, the hands that built this home, the feet that walked these same paths, and the voices that whispered stories into the ears of their children just as you do now. There is a profound sense of continuity in your life. You are not a solitary figure, you are a link in an unbreakable chain. In the quiet of the night, you look at your children sleeping, their faces peaceful and unburdened by the weight of tomorrow. You are reminded that everything you do, every hour in the field, every task by the hearth, every sacrifice made during the harsh winter, is for them. It is a labor of love, a quiet, enduring commitment to ensuring that the life of the family persists. This sense of purpose is the bedrock of your peace. It gives you strength when you are tired and warmth when the world feels cold. There is a simple, unspoken philosophy in your home. Life is a gift to be honoured. You pass this down not through grand speeches, but through the everyday rhythm of your existence. You teach your children how to read the clouds, how to bake bread, how to respect the silence of the woods, and how to find beauty in the smallest of things, a sprout pushing through the soil, the first light of dawn, the shared warmth of a meal. These are the lessons that build a life of dignity and inner contentment. As you reflect on these connections, your heart feels heavy with a gentle, comforting gratitude. You realize that the history of your people is not just found in the records of kings or the battles of armies. It is found here, in the love you hold for your family and the heritage you pass on. This is the true story of the Tudor era. The story of the people who worked, loved and lived with a profound, quiet resilience that has echoed through the centuries to reach you tonight in this moment of rest. If this story has brought a sense of connection and peace to your mind, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support is the heartbeat that keeps this series alive, and by being part of our community, you help us continue to share these tales that celebrate the human spirit and the beauty of our shared past. Every like and subscription is a step we take together, ensuring that these stories of resilience, family and history find their place in the quietest hours of your night. Thank you for choosing to rest with us. The fire is dying down now, the flames softening into a gentle pulsating amber. The warmth is fading to a soft embers glow, perfect for drifting into the deepest, most restorative stage of sleep. Feel your breathing slow to match the rhythm of the dying embers. Your body is heavy, completely at ease, and your mind is clear, anchored by the knowledge that you are a part of a story much larger than yourself. Everything is in its right place. The night is quiet, the house is safe, and you are ready to let go, sinking into the velvet depths of a long, dream-filled night. The world has finally fallen completely silent. The village outside is lost in a deep, dreamless slumber, and the only remaining connection to the waking world is the very last soft pulsing of the hearth. You can no longer see the rafters above you. The shadows have claimed the room, wrapping you in a cocoon of absolute stillness. This is the hour of true rest, where the mind finally detaches from the demands of the day and drifts into the vast calm ocean of sleep. Every tension has left your limbs. Your hands, which worked so hard in the fields and by the loom, are now motionless, resting at your sides. Your heart beats slowly, a steady rhythmic drum that guides you deeper into the dark. There is no more history to recount, no more tasks to plan. There is only the feeling of the warm wool blanket against your skin and the knowledge that you are safe within these walls. You are a small part of a great unfolding timeline, and for now the only thing required of you is to let go. The last flicker of the fire casts a faint dying amber glow against the wall, a final sign of the day's labour before it, too, fades into the soft grey of cooling ash. As the light disappears, you feel yourself descending. The transition is seamless, like drifting from a boat into a warm, still lake. You are weightless. You are drifting beyond the constraints of time, beyond the boundaries of the cottage, out into the quiet, starlit expanse of a world that is at peace. Let the silence fill you. Let the stories of the day dissolve into the quiet hum of your own breath. You have walked through the fields, sat by the hearth and shared in the timeless human experience of a Tudor life. Now that journey is complete. There is nothing left to do but drift. The night is long, the rest is deep, and the dream world is waiting to welcome you home. This content is inspired by and adapted from public domain works available through Project Gutenberg. The material has been transformed through original narration, editing, and storytelling to create a unique experience for educational and entertainment purposes. Even in the most remote corners of the kingdom, the shadow of the throne in London is long and imposing. You might believe that your life is governed solely by the sun and the soil, but the reality is that the shifting tides of Tudor politics ripple down through every layer of society. It is a time of immense transformation, a period where the very foundation of the world, the Church, is undergoing a violent and irreversible metamorphosis. You hear it in the hushed tones of the village elders at the communal well. They speak of the king's great matter, of the changing of the liturgy, and of the icons being stripped from the parish walls. For a peasant, this is not just high-level political manoeuvring. It is a direct alteration of your spiritual safety. When the monasteries, those bastions of charity and stability, are dissolved under the Crown's order, you feel a tangible loss. The abbey, which once served as a sanctuary for the sick and a provider for the poor in times of famine, is now a crumbling shell of stone, its lands carved up by the local gentry. This shift creates a subtle, underlying tension that permeates the air of the village. You are taught to be loyal, for the monarch is the anointed representative of the divine. Yet there is a deep ancestral grief for the rituals that are being silenced. You find yourself navigating this duality with caution. Life in the 16th century is a tightrope walk between survival and compliance. You perform your duties, you pay your taxes, and you keep your head down, understanding that to be noticed by the higher authorities is often the first step toward misfortune. The political landscape is not merely a series of names and dates, it is the atmosphere you breathe. When you hear of a new law regarding the enclosure of common lands, you look at your own small strip of earth and wonder if your family's right to graze your animals will be the next thing to be stripped away. The enclosure movement, driven by the lucrative wool trade, is slowly altering the face of England, turning ancient communal pastures into private property for the wealthy. It is a slow, quiet war, not fought with swords or cannons, but with property deeds and iron fences. This environment fosters a deep, guarded wisdom. You learn to read the intentions of the bailiff when he arrives to collect the rent. You learn to interpret the gossip from the market towns, discerning what is truth and what is dangerous speculation. Your survival depends on this situational awareness. You are not just a labourer, you are a survivor of a rapidly changing world. The stability you crave is elusive, constantly challenged by the ambitions of those in London. Yet in this precariousness there is a profound resilience. You adapt, you endure, and you find ways to protect your small piece of the world, keeping your family and your traditions intact, despite the turbulent winds of reform that blow from the halls of power down to your humble door. The transformation of the English landscape is not merely a political shift, it is an economic revolution that begins in the very fields you plough. If you look closely at the changing horizon, you will notice that more and more land is being converted into vast enclosed pastures for sheep. The great wool trade is the engine of the Tudor economy. a hunger for profit that reaches from the bustling merchant halls of London and the ports of the Low Countries straight into the heart of your village. In years past, the village was a closed loop. You grew your barley, you raised a few chickens, and your life was contained within the borders of the manor. But now the pressure to produce is different. The nobility and the rising merchant class have realized that wool is white gold. When the lord of the manor decides to enclose the common land, the land where your ancestors grazed their cows for generations, it is not merely an act of greed, but a response to this global market. You are no longer just feeding your family, you are a cog in a vast international supply chain. This change brings a subtle shift in the social order. You see neighbours who once worked beside you now struggling, their access to the commons restricted, forced to sell their labour for a pittance in the spinning workshops of the local clothiers. The cottage industry is evolving. Before you spun wool for your own clothes, now you spin for a merchant who arrives on horseback, his ledgers tucked under his arm, demanding a quota. The autonomy of the peasant is slowly being eroded, replaced by the precarious dependency of the wage labourer. There is a distinct tension in the air as these economic realities take hold. You witness the rise of the enclosure riots, small desperate pockets of resistance where fences are torn down in the dead of night. These are not acts of anarchy, but of survival. They are the voice of a people who realize that their traditional way of life, a life of communal stewardship, is being sacrificed on the altar of commercial expansion. You feel the weight of this change in your daily life. The price of basic necessities fluctuates with the success of the wool trade, and the security of your tenure on the land becomes increasingly fragile. Yet, despite this looming uncertainty, the resilience of your community is remarkable. You adapt to these new demands, incorporating more labour into your daily grind to ensure your family remains fed. You learn the new ways, but you hold fast to the old knowledge. You understand that while the world around you is obsessed with the accumulation of wealth, your own worth is measured in the survival of your kin and the continuity of the harvest. This era of early capitalism, which would eventually transform England into a global power, is experienced by you as a slow, often painful navigation through a world that values profit over the ancient, sacred bonds of the land. It is a period of historical transition where the medieval heart of the village beats in rhythm with the cold, calculated pulse of a modern, emerging trade empire. To exist in the 16th century is to live in a state of fragile equilibrium with the unseen forces of nature. In the absence of modern medical knowledge, the human body is viewed through the lens of the humours, the ancient belief that health is a delicate balance of blood, yellow bile, black bile and phlegm. When you fall ill, the village does not look for pathogens, they look for an imbalance in your constitution or perhaps a celestial misalignment. This worldview is not merely superstition, it is the logical framework of the time. If you suffer from a fever, the physician, or more likely the local wise woman who actually understands the properties of roots and barks, will seek to restore the balance through bloodletting or herbal poultices. You witness these treatments with a mix of awe and trepidation. The boundaries between medicine, magic and religion are porous. When a wave of sickness sweeps through the village, it is often seen as a divine trial or a punishment for the community's lack of piety. The true spectre that haunts every Tudor household, however, is the sweating sickness. It arrives with terrifying speed, striking the healthy and the frail alike, often killing within 24 hours. You remember the whispers in the marketplace about how the air itself seems tainted. During these times, the social fabric of the village is tested to its absolute limit. Neighbours avoid neighbours, the shutters of the cottages are drawn tight, and the communal life you rely on is severed by the instinct to survive. These moments of crisis reveal the harsh realities of the era's infrastructure. There is no public sanitation, no concept of quarantine in the modern sense. You rely on the isolation of your own home and the limited knowledge passed down through generations. You learn to burn rosemary to purify the air, believing that the scent can ward off the miasma or bad air that is thought to carry the contagion. It is a desperate yet logical effort to control the uncontrollable. The history of the Tudor peasant is defined by this constant negotiation with mortality. You learn to accept that life is fleeting, and this realization shapes your character. You do not dwell in anxiety. Instead, you cultivate a stoic acceptance of your fate. This does not mean you are heartless. Rather, it means you have developed a profound capacity to grieve and move forward. You see the cycle of life and death reflected in your fields, the harvest and the decay, the planting and the reaping. Your own health is just one part of this broader cycle. Despite the limitations of 16th century science, there is an incredible strength in the way your community bands together to care for the suffering, sharing what little they have, and providing comfort in the final hours. It is in this struggle that the resilience of the human spirit truly shines, proving that even when faced with the inexplicable, the impulse to help one another remains the most enduring force of the age. In the world of a Tudor peasant, the concept of justice is not a cold, distant entity represented by wigged judges in grand stone halls. Instead, it is a lived, local experience, a negotiation that takes place within the manorial court. This is the place where the customs of the village meet the authority of the Lord. You do not look to the king's law for your daily disputes. You look to the custom of the manor, a set of unwritten, ancient rules that have governed the village since time immemorial. When a dispute arises, perhaps a neighbour's cow has wandered into your vegetable patch, or there is a disagreement over the boundary between two strips of land, you do not immediately call for the authorities. The first line of defence is the community itself. You attempt to resolve the matter over a shared ale or a quiet conversation at the edge of the field. However, when the impasse is absolute, the manorial court is called here. The steward of the manor presides, but it is the jury of your own peers, the other villagers, who hold the real power. There is a deep inherent logic to this system, because your neighbours know the history of your land, the quality of your fences, and the patterns of your labour. They are the best judges of your character and your grievance. They understand that a fine imposed on a struggling family could mean the difference between a winter of survival and a winter of starvation. As a result, the justice dispensed here is often tempered by a profound sense of communal empathy. It is less about rigid legal dogma and more about maintaining the delicate balance of the village's survival. However, this system also reveals the power dynamics of the era. The lord of the manor holds the ultimate right to the land, and the court is in many ways his instrument. You are acutely aware that while you have customary rights, they are only as secure as the lord's favour. You navigate this legal landscape with a careful balance of pride and deference. You defend your rights to common grazing or timber collection with conviction, citing the time-out-of-mind traditions, yet you always acknowledge the authority of the Lord who provides the protection of the manor. This legal life, while often mundane, is the bedrock of societal stability. It teaches you that you are a participant in a social contract. You contribute to the order of the village, and in return, the village safeguards your livelihood. It is a system that values stability over absolute fairness and collective harmony over individual gain. As you sit in the dusty room where the court is held, listening to the murmurs of your neighbours and the scratching of the steward's quill, you realise that history is not just made by the decrees of monarchs, but by these thousands of small, local decisions that keep the fabric of English society from unravelling. You are not just a subject, you are a vital participant in the maintenance of order, a guardian of the traditions that allow your people to endure, year after year, under the shifting skies of the Tudor age. In an age before the printing press could reach the common man, and long before the concept of a daily newspaper, information travels at the pace of a horse's gait or the stride of a weary traveller. For you, the world outside the village is a fog of hearsay, rumour and half-truths. You do not receive news, you receive stories, passed from person to person like a relay race, where the final runner often tells a tale vastly different from the one that started the journey. The village alehouse is your primary window to the wider world. It is here that the tinker, the peddler, or the occasional soldier returning from a distant garrison brings word of the king's latest decrees or the shifting winds of European alliances. You listen with a mixture of fascination and scepticism. You have learned that the further a piece of news travels from London, the more it transforms. A tax increase becomes a rumour of rebellion. A royal wedding becomes a sign of divine favour or impending doom. You have become an expert in discernment, learning to read the expressions of the messenger just as much as the content of their message. This slow, organic spread of information fosters a unique cultural atmosphere. You live in a state of perpetual anticipation. When the bell tolls for a special proclamation, the entire village gathers, a sea of upturned, weathered faces hanging on every word of the manorial official. You are witnessing history in the making, yet you are always one step removed from its true source. This distance creates a sense of vulnerability. You are subject to decisions made in chambers you will never enter, by men whose faces you will never see. Yet this isolation also breeds a fierce local autonomy. Because you cannot rely on official channels for your understanding of the world, you rely on the collective wisdom of your neighbours. You debate the meaning of the news. You test it against the reality of your daily life. Is the rumour of war true? If so, does it mean we will be called to provide men for the militia, or simply more grain for the king's stores? These questions dominate your conversations as you work in the fields. This process of communal sense-making is a powerful, if overlooked, aspect of Tudor life. It turns every villager into a historian of sorts, connecting fragments of information into a cohesive narrative that helps you navigate the hazards of your time. You learn that the truth is often hidden in the gaps between what is said and what is implied. In this way, you are not merely a passive recipient of the Crown's will, you are an active interpreter of your reality. Even in the deepest countryside, you are connected to the grand narrative of history, but you experience it through the unique, distorted, and intensely human lens of the village life, where the survival of the next season is far more important than the proclamations of a court you will never visit. In your world, education is not found in the sterile environment of a classroom, nor is it stored in the pages of books that are locked away behind the heavy doors of cathedrals and manor libraries. For the peasant of the Tudor era, education is a living, breathing inheritance passed down through the calloused hands of your parents and grandparents. It is the education of the eye, the ability to look at a cloud and smell the coming storm, or to observe the texture of the soil and know exactly when the wheat is ready for the scythe. From the moment your children can walk, they are initiated into this cycle of practical wisdom. They are not studying in the modern sense, they are apprentices to the rhythm of the natural world. They watch how you tend the fire, how you weave the willow, and how you speak to the animals. This imitation is the most profound form of teaching. They learn the language of the land, the specific calls of the birds that signify a change in the season, the subtle variations in the colour of the grain that reveal its ripeness, and the complex chemistry of the herbs that grow in your garden. This is a holistic education that encompasses not just the physical tasks, but the moral and cultural values of your people. You teach them the customs of the village, the importance of sharing the communal oven, the respect owed to the elders, and the sacred nature of the harvest. These lessons are woven into the stories told by the hearth at night, the legends of the land that instill a sense of place and belonging. By the time your child reaches adulthood, they possess a wealth of knowledge that is perfectly calibrated to their environment, a survival kit built of experience, observation, and communal memory. The beauty of this system is its inherent resilience. It ensures that regardless of the political upheavals in London or the shifting of monarchs, the fundamental skills required to survive remain intact. You are not just raising a worker, you are preserving a culture. There is a quiet, intense pride in this responsibility. When you see your daughter expertly carding wool with the same rhythmic motion she learned from her grandmother, or your son identifying the signs of a dying tree before it falls, you know that you have succeeded in your most important task. You have ensured that the history of your people will not be lost. This transmission of knowledge creates a profound bond between the generations. It is a dialogue that transcends the barrier of time, connecting you to ancestors you never knew and your children to a future you will never see. It transforms the repetitive, often grueling labor of daily life into something more meaningful. It becomes a vessel for tradition. As you watch your children work, you feel a deep, grounding sense of peace. The world may be uncertain, and the future may be veiled in shadow, but the skills that sustain you have been refined over centuries. This is your legacy, and in the quiet, focused intensity of your village, it is a legacy that remains as solid and enduring as the stone of the parish church. To the outside observer, your religious life might appear to be a strict adherence to the liturgy of the parish church, but in reality, the faith of a Tudor peasant is a rich, tangled tapestry where the rituals of the church and the ancient primal rhythms of the land are inextricably woven together. You follow the calendar of the saints, yes, but your true markers are the turning points of the earth, the midsummer solstice, the harvest home, and the deep silent hibernation of midwinter. When you participate in the beating of the bounds, the annual tradition of walking the perimeter of the parish to bless the fields, you are doing more than affirming your faith. You are marking the physical limits of your existence, reinforcing the communal identity of the village, and invoking a blessing upon the soil that feeds you. It is a ritual of protection, a way of signalling to the natural forces that this land is cared for, that this community is unified, and that the cycle of production is respected. There is a profound, quiet power in these ceremonies. They allow you to process the anxieties of your existence. When the spring is slow to arrive, the May Day celebrations are not just games and dancing, they are a collective act of hope, an attempt to coax the earth back to fertility. You sing the old songs, dance the traditional steps, and decorate the village with fresh greenery, believing that by mimicking the renewal of nature, you help it to manifest. This is the sympathetic magic that underpins your daily devotion. The church provides the grand narrative, the promise of salvation, and the order of the divine. But it is the folklore that provides the immediate, tactile comfort. You wear protective charms of rowan wood, you leave out offerings for the good neighbours who live in the hills, and you observe the omens of the seasons. To you there is no contradiction here. The world is a place of profound mystery, filled with unseen agencies, and you use every tool at your disposal, prayers to the saints and respect for the spirits of the woods alike, to navigate it safely. This synthesis of belief creates a spiritual resilience that is incredibly durable. It means you're never truly at the mercy of a cold, indifferent universe. You're an active participant in a cosmic drama, a steward of the land who holds the responsibility of maintaining the balance. This sense of stewardship gives a deeper purpose to your labour. When you plough the earth, you are not just working for a wage or a crop, you are performing a sacred duty. You are ensuring that the world continues to turn as it should. As you reflect on this during the quiet hours, you feel a sense of profound belonging. You are the bridge between the heavens and the earth, the physical embodiment of the traditions that keep the world in harmony. This isn't just history, it is a way of being. It is a philosophy that sees no divide between the sacred and the mundane, where every act, from the lighting of a candle in the church to the baking of a loaf of bread, is a testament to your participation in the great unfolding mystery of life. In the silence of your cottage, this realization brings a deep, unwavering peace, anchoring you to the earth even as your mind wanders into the vast, ancient depths of belief. While the history books of the era are dominated by the bold actions of kings and the public manoeuvres of courtiers, the actual life of the village is sustained by a quiet yet formidable force, the women of the Tudor household. To a modern observer, the legal status of a woman in the 16th century, often subsumed under the identity of a father or husband, might suggest a lack of agency. But step inside a cottage and you see a different reality. The woman is the architect of survival, the manager of the domestic economy, and the final authority on the health and welfare of the community. You see it in the way the kitchen garden is organized. It is not merely a patch of vegetables, it is a meticulously planned apothecary and larder. The woman of the house manages the entire cycle of food, from the preservation of herbs and the salting of meats to the complex process of brewing ale, which provides necessary hydration in a world where water is often unsafe. This is a scientific and managerial role that requires immense skill and foresight. She knows exactly how much grain must be stored to survive the hungry gap of late winter, and she is the one who balances the household budget, often trading surplus goods for necessities at the market. Beyond the threshold of the home, her influence remains deep and pervasive. The women are the keepers of the oral tradition. They are the ones who recount the genealogies, the local legends, and the medicinal knowledge that sustains the village through plagues and harvests. When the men are away in the fields or serving in the local militia, it is the women who maintain the social order, settle minor disputes, and ensure that the village continues to function as a cohesive unit. Their soft power is the glue that holds the village together when the pressures of the outside world threaten to pull it apart. There is a unique resilience in the women of this era. They bear the double burden of labour, both in the fields during the intense harvest weeks and in the relentless maintenance of the home, yet they carry it with a steady, pragmatic dignity. They are the ones who face the tragedy of infant mortality and the harsh realities of childbirth with a stoic, compassionate resolve. Their knowledge is communal. They gather at the well or the washing stream to share secrets, exchange remedies, and offer support. This network of women is an invisible infrastructure of strength, a system of mutual aid that operates parallel to the official, male-dominated hierarchy of the church and manor. As you sit in the quiet of the night, you realize that the history of the Tudor era is incomplete without recognizing this female labor. It is a story of endurance, adaptability, and quiet leadership. The society might be structured to give the appearance of male command, but the day-to-day existence of the village is guided by the wisdom of the women. They are the true anchors of the era, the ones who ensure that despite the political storms, the dynastic shifts, and the economic hardships, the hearth remains lit, the family is fed, and the traditions are passed forward. Their quiet, persistent influence is the heartbeat of the village, a testament to the fact that power, in its most enduring form, is often found in the most humble and essential of tasks. Once a month, the quiet rhythm of your existence is intentionally broken by the journey to the nearest market town. For you, this is more than just a trip to trade surplus grain or wool. It is an expedition into a different reality. As you approach the town, the air changes. It becomes thicker with the scent of wood smoke from multiple chimneys, the smell of tanned leather from the workshops, and the cacophony of voices haggling in the narrow, winding streets. This is where the self-contained life of your village briefly brushes against the burgeoning complexity of the Tudor world. The market square is a sensory overload. You see goods that are rarely found in the village. Fine cloths imported from the Low Countries, spices that carry the scent of distant exotic lands, and metal tools forged with a precision far beyond the reach of your local smith. This is the visual proof that England is expanding, that its reach is extending far beyond the manor walls. You watch the town merchants, men in doublets of quality wool, their hands clean and their ledgers meticulous. They represent a new social force, the rising middle class, who trade in influence and goods rather than the labour of the land. You observe these interactions with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. These townspeople live by a different clock. They operate on credit, on contracts, and on the fluctuating demands of far-off markets. You hear them discuss the latest royal proclamations with a sense of familiarity that highlights your own isolation. The town is the filter through which the news of the kingdom is processed. It is here that you learn which political figures have risen or fallen, and how the king's taxes might impact the price of the goods you bring to sell. The town is a place of information as much as it is a place of trade. Yet even in the midst of this hustle and bustle, you remain a creature of the village. You engage in your business with the steady, practiced patience of a farmer. You know the value of your wool, and you refuse to be hurried by the frantic pace of the town merchants. There is a quiet pride in your presence here. You provide the raw material that fuels this entire ecosystem, from the grand estates to the bustling town shops. Without the labour of your hands, this entire superstructure of trade would grind to a halt. As you return home in the evening, the contrast between the town's chaotic vibrancy and your village's steady, rhythmic peace becomes even more pronounced. The town is a place of ambition, of change, and of the future. The village is a place of tradition, of continuity, and of the deep ancestral past. You bring back more than just goods. You bring back the realization that the world is moving forward at an accelerated pace. This understanding adds a new layer to your quiet evening reflections by the hearth. You realize that you are living on the cusp of an era of unprecedented transition. The stability you have fought so hard to maintain is being tested by these new currents of commerce and thought. Yet as you step back into the familiar warmth of your cottage, you find a profound, renewed sense of comfort in the simplicity of your life. The town may belong to the future, but the village belongs to the earth, and tonight that is exactly where you belong. The cottage you inhabit is more than just shelter. It is an organic extension of the landscape, woven from the very materials provided by the fields and the forest. For generations, the wattle and daub construction, a skeletal frame of timber packed with a mixture of mud, straw, and dung, has been the standard. It is a humble, breathable architecture that survives because it is flexible, capable of shifting with the settling earth. But in recent years, you have begun to see the slow, steady transformation of the village's silhouette. A new spirit of permanence is taking hold. In the market town, you see houses being built with chimneys of brick and foundations of quarried stone. This is not merely a change in aesthetics, it is a profound cultural shift. The introduction of brick and stone signifies the end of the transient, temporary nature of peasant life. People are beginning to invest in their homes as long-term assets, creating structures that are designed to outlive them. You see the more prosperous farmers in the village experimenting with stone foundations, protecting their timber frames from the damp rot that has plagued their ancestors for centuries. This shift in construction speaks to a subtle change in the social psychology of the era. The Tudor period is one of rising literacy and a developing sense of individual property rights. When you replace a dirt floor with packed clay or stone, or when you add a more stable hearth to your chimney, you are making a claim on your future. You are asserting that your family intends to remain on this land for generations to come. It is an act of defiance against the precarity of the past. The cold, damp drafts that once defined the winter months are now being tempered by these more robust, insulated structures. Yet there is a lingering tension between this new desire for solidity and the traditional communal way of life. The old timber frames, built during communal raising days, were a physical manifestation of the village's shared labour. The new stone and brick structures, often commissioned from specialized masons from outside the village, reflect a shift toward a more individualized, contract-based society. You watch these new houses rise with a mixture of admiration and quiet unease. They represent comfort and security, yes, but they also represent a break from the ancient fluid relationship between the villager and the village. As you sit in your own cottage, listening to the wind outside, you feel the familiar soft give of the timber frame. There is a comfort in this, a reminder that you are part of an ancient lineage of builders who worked with what the earth gave them. You don't envy the cold, hard permanence of the new brick homes. You find beauty in the way your home breathes. It is a living thing, a temporary sanctuary in a world that is always moving. But you also realize that the era of these ephemeral timber-framed lives is drawing to a close. History is hardening. The village is becoming a place of more rigid structures, more distinct boundaries, and a more permanent sense of place. This transition is slow, subtle, and inevitable, much like the seasons themselves. It is the physical manifestation of the evolving Tudor identity, a people who are beginning to stake their claim on the landscape, building a world that is meant to endure, stone by stone, brick by brick. In the vast undulating landscape of the Tudor countryside, you are rarely truly alone. Beside you, with eyes fixed on your every movement, is your constant companion, the sheepdog. This relationship is far more profound than that of master and tool. It is a primal partnership forged in the necessity of survival. You and the dog are two parts of a single functional unit. In the quiet of the morning, when the mist still clings to the valley floor, your shared understanding is absolute. A single whistle, a subtle gesture of your hand, is all it takes to coordinate the movement of the flock across the treacherous, uneven terrain. The history of your village is, in many ways, the history of this symbiosis. You provide the shelter and the sustenance, and in return, the animal provides the vigilance and the labour that makes your agrarian life possible. You watch the dog's behaviour with a keen, almost respectful eye, the way it senses the approach of a predator long before you do, or how it predicts the shifting mood of the sheep before a storm. In this interaction, you learn to trust the instincts of the animal more than your own senses. It is a humbling lesson in the limits of human perception and the depth of nature's intelligence. This bond extends to all the creatures of your farmstead. The sturdy oxen that pull the plough, the cow that provides the milk, and even the poultry that scratch at the threshing floor, they are the secondary family of the Tudor cottage. You recognise their individual temperaments, their small quirks, and the distinct ways they communicate their needs. During the brutal months of winter, when the cold threatens to seep into your very bones, you take comfort in the heat and the steady, rhythmic breathing of the livestock housed in the nearby shed. Their presence is a grounding force, a reminder that you are part of a larger circle of life that must be protected and nurtured if you are to persist. There is a particular dignity in the way you treat these animals. You do not view them as mere commodities, despite the economic pressures of the wool trade that push the village toward commercialization. You treat them with a rough, pragmatic kindness born of the realization that your fates are intertwined. If they suffer, you suffer. If they fail to thrive, your family faces the shadow of hunger. This mutual dependence creates a deep, unspoken bond that softens the harsh realities of the era. It teaches you that leadership is not just about command. It is about stewardship and care. As the sun sets, casting long golden shadows across the fields, you walk back to the cottage with your dog at your heels. The exhaustion in your limbs is tempered by the quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done, a success made possible by this shared effort. You realize that this connection to the animal world is a fundamental part of what makes you human. It anchors you to the earth, to the cycles of life, and to the ancient, wordless history of those who worked this land before you. In this quiet moment of return, with the landscape settling into the cool embrace of evening, you feel a profound sense of completeness. You are a steward of your small corner of the world, and in the loyal gaze of your companion, you find a reflection of the resilience that allows your people and their animals to endure year after season, century after century. The horizon of your world is receding year by year. The deep ancient forests that once stood as the dark protective borders of your village are retreating, felled by the relentless hunger of the wool trade. What were once sprawling wild thickets where the deer roamed and the songbirds nested are being systematically levelled, replaced by the endless manicured expanse of sheep pastures. To the merchants in the town, this is improvement. To you, it is the quiet, steady erasure of a world that once breathed in tandem with your own. You notice the shifts in the land with the intuition of someone whose life is tied to the soil. Without the forests to break the force of the winds, the winters feel sharper, more biting as they scour the open pastures. The ground, once protected by the thick insulating carpet of leaf litter, now runs off in torrents of mud when the spring rains come, leaving the topsoil vulnerable and thin. You see the springs that once bubbled with clear cold water beginning to falter, their sources disturbed by the clearing of the trees that held the water table in balance. The rhythm of the land is faltering, and you are the witness to this slow environmental unravelling. This is not merely a loss of scenery, it is a loss of the communal ecosystem that sustained your ancestors. The forest provided the mast for the pigs, the fuel for the hearth, the medicine from the bark, and the shelter for the wild game that supplemented your diet. As the forest disappears, so too does a layer of your security. You are becoming increasingly dependent on the market for goods that once were freely gathered. The ecological cost of the wool trade is a hidden tax paid by the land itself, and you fear for what this means for the generations to come. Will the soil hold? Will the wells remain deep? There is a profound, mournful silence where the birdsong used to be. The complexity of the woods, that cathedral of biodiversity, has been flattened into a monoculture of grass. You observe the local wildlife retreating, driven into smaller and smaller pockets of shadow, and you feel a strange, disquieting empathy for them. You too are being pushed to the margins by the expansion of the enclosures. The same forces that carve up the landscape are carving up the social structure of the village, turning a wild, interconnected community into a grid of private property. As you stand on the edge of the new pasture, looking out over the rolling green that stretches toward the horizon, you feel a deep, haunting sense of responsibility. You have watched the transition, you have felt the change in the air, and you have carried the memory of the trees that once stood where the sheep now graze. This is the weight of being a guardian of the land, the knowledge that you are living through a fundamental shift in the Earth's story. It is a transition from an age of stewardship to an age of extraction. The world is becoming more productive, yes, but it is also becoming more brittle. As you walk back toward the village, the weight of the future presses upon you, a realization that the resilience of your people is now inextricably linked to the survival of a land that is being asked to provide more than it can naturally give. You are the final generation to remember the forest as it truly was, and in that memory you carry the ghost of a wild ancient England that is rapidly fading into the pages of history. For as long as memory serves, the peasant's diet has been a reflection of the immediate earth. Pottage of oats and peas, dark rye bread that sits heavy in the belly, and the occasional salted bacon that marks the passage of a hard winter. But the world is growing wider, and the kitchen table, once a shrine to the local harvest, is beginning to host the flavours of a distant, expanding globe. You observe these changes with a mix of suspicion and intrigue, for the food you eat is the most intimate connection you have to the shifting boundaries of the kingdom. It starts with the small things, a new variety of root vegetable brought back by the merchants in the market town, or the subtle spicy warmth of a seasoning that you have never tasted before. These are not merely curiosities, they are markers of a new era of global connection. The Tudor appetite is expanding, and even in the furthest villages, the influence of the mercantile fleet is felt. You find yourself adapting your traditional recipes, adding a touch of something foreign to the familiar, unchanging base of your pottage. It is a slow, gradual assimilation of the exotic into the essential. This evolution in diet is more than just a matter of taste. It is a change in the very energy of the village. The availability of new agricultural produce, partly a result of the changing enclosure patterns and partly due to the import of new crops, is beginning to diversify the nutritional landscape. You notice that the children are perhaps a little stronger, and the vitality of the harvest workers seems to hold for a few hours longer under the weight of this improved nourishment. It is a subtle fortification, a strengthening of the village's resilience that you had not realized was possible. Yet this transformation brings with it a sense of loss. When you replace the ancient bitter herbs gathered from the hedgerows with the cultivated varieties sold in the town, you are subtly distancing yourself from the wild, unkempt wisdom of your ancestors. You are choosing the comfort of the market over the independence of the forest. This is the quiet trade-off of the age. You gain variety, you gain a sense of sophistication, and you gain a measure of culinary security, but you relinquish a piece of that raw, untamed identity that once defined your relationship with the land. As you sit by the hearth, dipping a piece of bread into a bowl of pottage that now contains vegetables your grandmother would not recognize, you ponder the implications of this shift. You are part of an England that is no longer content to simply survive on what it can gather from the local soil. You are consuming the world, and in doing so you are being consumed by it. The Tudor table is becoming a map of the kingdom's ambitions. It is a fascinating, complex experience to taste the change in the very air of your kitchen. You are aware that this is just the beginning, that the future will bring even more dramatic alterations to the way your people sustain themselves. For tonight you find a quiet contentment in the meal, a blend of the old and the new, a reflection of your own life, rooted in the ancient mud of the village, yet reaching out tentatively and with great curiosity into the vast unfolding promise of the world beyond. In a world where the vast majority of stories are never committed to parchment, music becomes the primary vessel of your history. Your songs are not merely entertainment, they are the living, breathing archives of the village. When you gather in the tavern or sit around the hearth during the long winter nights, you are not just singing to pass the time, you are reciting the oral chronicle of your people. Every ballad has a purpose. Every melody carries the weight of a memory that must not be forgotten. There is a unique alchemy in how these songs transform events into legend. A political execution in London or a royal scandal at court is quickly distilled into a rhythmic verse, often stripped of its complex, dangerous political implications and recast as a cautionary tale or a tragic romance. You listen to these songs with an acute awareness that they are encoding the truth through the repetition of a chorus. The details of a famine, a rebellion, or the passing of a great sovereign are etched into the communal consciousness. You become a participant in a long, continuous performance of history, where every generation adds its own verse to the ongoing song of the nation. The music of the Tudor peasant is inextricably linked to the pulse of the seasons. You have songs for the planting, songs for the harvest, and solemn, haunting chants for the burial of the dead. These melodies are not separate from the labour, they are the rhythmic engine that drives it. When you work in the fields, the collective singing coordinates the movement of the scythes, turning the back-breaking labour into a coordinated, almost hypnotic ritual. This is the human technology that allows your people to endure the intensity of the harvest without collapsing under the strain. Music provides the focus, the morale, and the shared endurance that physical strength alone cannot sustain. Yet there is a subtext of dissent in some of these melodies. You hear the hushed, careful tones in which certain ballads are sung, songs that touch upon the grievances of the enclosure movement or the injustices of the tax collectors. Music allows you to voice the unutterable. By cloaking your frustrations in the language of folk legend, you can critique the powerful without facing the consequences of open rebellion. It is a subtle, sophisticated form of resistance, a way of maintaining your dignity and asserting your humanity in a society where your status is often rendered invisible. As you lean back against the cool stone of your hearth, the melody of an old familiar song fills the room, carried by the voices of your family. You feel the deep, resonant vibrations in your chest, a connection to the thousands of voices that have sung these same lines across the centuries. It is a profound realization. You are not just a labourer in a changing economy or a subject under a shifting crown. You are a link in an unbroken chain of human expression. The song does not need a library to be preserved. It only needs a heart that remembers. As the final notes drift off into the rafters and the room falls silent, you feel a sense of profound continuity. The world may be evolving, the architecture may be hardening, and the table may be changing, but the music remains the constant beating heart of the Tudor soul, ensuring that no matter how much time passes, the story of your people will always find a voice. When the sun dips below the horizon and the last embers in the hearth fade, your world fundamentally changes. The darkness of the 16th century is not the tamed, artificial gloom of the modern age. It is a thick, absolute and living presence. Outside your cottage, the woods and the fields transform into a theatre of the unknown. You hear the rustle of the wind against the thatch. As something more than mere weather, it is a whisper of the unseen, a reminder that the world is inhabited by forces far beyond your command. Your fear of the dark is a rational response to a world where hazards are real and often invisible. You do not just fear ghosts in the sense of stories told to children. You fear the ill-willed, those energies, spirits, or vengeful presences that are believed to thrive in the hours between sunset and dawn. This is the time when the boundaries between the living and the dead, the human and the supernatural, are at their most permeable. You keep your doors bolted, not just against the thief or the wild beast, but against the malaise that might drift in with the midnight fog. Yet this pervasive fear acts as a powerful catalyst for human connection. In the face of the encroaching dark, the village becomes a fortress of shared warmth. You gather your family close, you talk, you sing, and you sustain the light of the candle not just to see, but to signify that life still persists within these walls. This communal defiance against the darkness is what keeps the social fabric from tearing. You learn that the only way to endure the terrors of the night is to share the burden of them with your neighbours. The communal prayers and the shared rituals of protection, the sprinkling of salt, the hanging of protective herbs above the lintel, are acts of collective resilience. There is a strange, quiet dignity in this constant negotiation with fear. It demands a level of vigilance and stoicism that shapes your character. You are a person who has learned to function in uncertainty, who has looked into the vast, indifferent dark and decided to build a home regardless. This is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. It teaches you to cherish the light all the more, to see every dawn not as a guaranteed event, but as a hard-won victory. You develop a deep, grounded humility. You know how small you are in the face of the infinite, and this awareness makes you kinder, more attentive to your kin, and more appreciative of the small, fleeting joys of the day. As you lie in the dark, listening to the rhythmic breathing of your house, you feel the weight of these ancient terrors and the strength of the defiance you have built against them. The dark is not something to be conquered, for it will always return. Instead, it is something to be accommodated, to be respected, and to be outlived. You have learned to find a strange, profound peace in the stillness, a recognition that you are part of a cycle that encompasses both the brightness of the day and the mystery of the night. In the silence of the room, you are not alone. You are tethered to the generations who faced this same darkness, who felt this same fear, and who, like you, lit their lamps, bolted their doors, and waited for the morning with an unwavering ancestral resolve. In the depth of winter, when the earth is locked in the icy grip of frost and the fields demand nothing of your labour, the village undergoes a peculiar magical transformation. This is the time of the great seasonal festivals, the days when the rigid hierarchies of Tudor society, the clear divide between the lord and the tenant, the merchant and the labourer, are briefly, joyfully suspended. For these few precious days, the world feels as though it has been turned upside down, and for a short while you are allowed the liberty to dream beyond the furrows of your own land. The village tavern, often a place of sober reflection or communal debate, becomes a sanctuary of excess and mirth. You witness the Lord of Misrule, a commoner chosen to preside over the festivities, issuing mock commands to the local elite. There is a profound cathartic power in this inversion. It is a shared acknowledgement that the structures governing your life, the laws, the tithes, the social expectations are, in the end, human constructs. By mocking them, you are not rebelling, but rather finding a way to cope with their weight. You dance, you eat the richer foods kept for this occasion, and you share tales that defy the gravity of your daily struggles. These festivals are the pressure valves of your society. The year is long and the demands of the Tudor age are relentless, but these moments of communal license remind you that there is a joy inherent in human existence that no landlord can reclaim and no royal decree can forbid. You see your neighbours, men and women who bear the burdens of survival in their bent backs and calloused hands, becoming something else entirely. Singers, dancers, storytellers. The masks worn during the processions allow you to shed your identity as a peasant and assume the role of a mythical being, a spirit of the season, or a figure from a distant golden past. There is a deep underlying significance to these celebrations that goes beyond mere revelry. They are a communal reaffirmation of belonging. When you take part in the traditional dances, your hands joined with your neighbours in a chain that weaves through the narrow, snow-dusted lanes, you are physically manifesting the connections that keep the village alive. You are asserting that despite the individual hardships, despite the encroaching enclosures and the shifting politics of the kingdom, you are part of a whole. This unity is the most precious resource you possess, and the festival is the time when you celebrate it with the most intensity. As the fires burn high in the common hearth, and the music spills out into the crisp, silent night, you feel a sense of profound liberation. You know that tomorrow the frost will return, the work will resume, and the familiar boundaries of your life will snap back into place. But for now, you are free. You are a participant in a ritual that has been repeated for centuries, a celebration of the human spirit's capacity to find light in the dead of winter. It is a moment of total immersion in the present, an act of defiance against the cold, and a reminder that no matter how difficult the year has been, your capacity for joy remains untouched, ancient, and entirely your own. You go to sleep that night with a quiet smile, knowing that you have survived another turning of the wheel, and in the shared warmth of the village you have found the strength to face the spring that is yet to come. As the evenings grow longer and the work in the fields demands less of your physical presence, you find yourself watching your children with a new, unsettling clarity. There is a shift occurring, subtle yet as undeniable as the changing seasons. You see it in the way your daughter stares beyond the village gate, not with the contentment of one who knows her place in the cycle, but with a restless, searching curiosity. You see it in your son, who has begun to spend his spare hours in the market town, not to trade, but to learn the art of a craft that has nothing to do with the plough or the harvest. It is a bittersweet realization. You have raised them to be strong, to be observant, and to be resilient, the very qualities required to survive the Tudor age. Yet these same qualities are now driving them to look past the boundaries of the life you have fought so hard to maintain. The traditions that were once the anchors of your world are now, to their eyes, perhaps too heavy. They do not share the same unquestioning reverence for the custom of the manor that you do. They hear the whispers of the wider world, and they see a future that is not defined by the limitations of a peasant's holding. This is the silent, ongoing negotiation of history. You are the bridge between the ancestral past, where life was defined by the stability of the land, and an emerging future where individual opportunity, however small, is beginning to outweigh the collective tradition. You feel a pang of loss for the quiet, predictable life you hoped they would inherit. You want them to be safe, to be protected by the familiar patterns of the village, but you also feel a deep ancestral pride in their desire to push beyond those bounds. If they have the courage to imagine a life outside the furrow, who are you to tell them they are wrong? Yet there is a lingering fear that this curiosity will lead them into a world for which they are not prepared. The village is a fortress of mutual aid, but the world outside is cold, transactional, and unforgiving. You worry that in their pursuit of something more, they will lose the safety of the communal net that has sustained your people for generations. You find yourself sharing more of your stories with them, not to preach, but to pass on the hidden maps of wisdom that have guided your survival, the lessons of caution, the importance of reading the unspoken intent of others, and the sacred value of honest labour. As you sit by the hearth watching the firelight dance in their eyes, you realize that your primary task is no longer just to keep them fed and sheltered, it is to prepare them for a world that you will never truly inhabit. You are witnessing the softening of the foundation, the moment when the village begins to transform into something else. It is a lonely feeling to know that your legacy is not to be preserved in the way you lived, but to be carried forward in their ability to adapt to a changing age. You reach out, placing a hand on their shoulder, and in that simple gesture you pass the torch of your people's resilience. They may leave the fields, they may turn their backs on the rhythm of the seasons, but they carry the same fire that burned in your ancestors. You have done your part. The future now belongs to them, to weave into their own history in a world that is spinning faster and more unpredictably than you ever dared to dream. As the years settle upon your shoulders like the heavy winter cloak, you find that the world you once understood, with its familiar rhythms and defined boundaries, has shifted into something grander and more elusive. You look at your calloused hands, scarred by the plough and stained by the earth, and you see in them a map of a life fully lived. You are no longer just a villager, you are a witness. You have stood at the intersection of an ancient past and an accelerating future, observing the slow, steady transformation of the world around you. There is a profound peace in this final vantage point. You have seen the forest recede and the pastures expand. You have seen the village hearths change from timber to brick. You have heard the old songs carry the news of kings, while new unfamiliar melodies begin to take hold. You realize that you were never merely a spectator of history. Every day you spent working the soil, every dispute you helped settle in the manor court, and every story you passed down to your children was a thread woven into the fabric of the nation. Your life, though it may seem small in the eyes of those who write the chronicles in London, was a foundational act of survival that allowed the entire structure of the kingdom to hold together. You reflect on the fear that once defined your younger years, the fear of the dark, the fear of the harvest's failure, the fear of the changing seasons. How small those terrors seem now, seen through the lens of a long, persistent endurance. You learned that resilience is not the absence of fear, but the ability to continue despite it. You have navigated the uncertainties of the Tudor age, protecting your kin and honouring the traditions that gave your life its shape. And in doing so, you have discovered that there is a quiet, indestructible dignity in a life dedicated to the land and the community. As you look toward the end of your own story, you feel no need for fame or monument. Your legacy is not carved in stone or written in books, but is carried in the very DNA of the village, in the patterns of the fields you helped shape, in the resilience you taught your children, and in the enduring melodies of the songs that still echo in the tavern. You are part of a continuous, living history. You have done your part to ensure that when the winds of change blow harder, your people will not be uprooted. You have anchored them to the earth, and you have given them the wisdom to grow toward the light. In the quiet of your cottage, as the fire flickers low, you feel a deep sense of completeness. You are a vessel of an era that is slowly fading, but you are also the bridge to a future you will not witness, and that is enough. You have been a steward, a storyteller, and a protector. You have played your role in the great, unfolding drama of human existence with a steadfast, quiet courage. As you close your eyes, the sounds of the village, the lowing of the cattle, the distant chime of the church bell, the murmur of the wind drift into your consciousness. You are part of it all, and it is part of you. You have journeyed through the time of the Tudors, not as a king, but as a guardian of the human spirit, and in this final moment of reflection, you realize that your life has been exactly what it was meant to be, a quiet, essential, and beautiful contribution to the eternal, ongoing story of the world. While the fields of the village operate on the slow, circular time of the seasons, the world of the town workshop operates on the linear, precise time of the task. Here, in the bustling heart of the market town, your life is defined not by the harvest cycle, but by the rhythm of your craft. Whether you are a blacksmith tempering steel, a weaver tending the loom, or a leatherworker shaping hides, you are part of a growing class of men and women whose power lies in their hands and their specialized knowledge. This is a life of meticulous detail and relentless demand. The workshop is a world of its own, a space filled with the scent of charcoal, the tang of metal, and the constant rhythmic clatter of industry. You do not wait for the weather to dictate your output, you impose your will upon the raw materials. There is a profound sense of agency in this work. You transform the base into the refined, creating tools and goods that enable the wider world to function. You are the invisible gears that turn the machinery of the Tudor economy. You see the merchant arrive with raw wool from the village, and you watch as your work converts that simple material into a product that will eventually travel to the grand markets of London or even overseas. You are the architect of a new material reality. Yet this autonomy comes at a price. In the town, you are subject to the rigid regulations of the guild. Every aspect of your work, the quality of your materials, the length of your apprenticeship, the prices you charge, is governed by a hierarchy of masters who protect their interests with a jealous intensity. You live in a space of both great opportunity and deep restriction. You are free from the crushing labour of the fields, but you are tethered to the complex, often cutthroat politics of urban trade. You must balance the pressure to produce more with the guild's strict demands for quality and standard. This environment fosters a very different kind of social consciousness. In the workshop, news is not just hearsay, it is a commodity. You are in constant contact with travellers, merchants and transient labourers, all of whom bring whispers from the royal court, from the continent, and from the shifting frontiers of the kingdom. You hear the debates about religious reform, the grumblings about royal taxation, and the speculative talk of new trade routes. In the workshop, the grand narrative of history is constantly being broken down and discussed. You are among the first to understand that the world is changing, and you are the ones who are creating the very tools that will facilitate that change. As the day draws to a close and you bank the forge or silence the loom, you feel a fatigue that is distinctly different from the exhaustion of the farmer. It is a mental weariness, a residue of intense focus and constant calculation. You look out over the town, seeing the flickering lights of other workshops, and you realize that you are part of a quiet, growing revolution. The future is not being written in the palaces of the kings, but in the grime and the sweat of these workshops. You are shaping the physical world, and in doing so, you are shaping the very nature of human ambition. You are the vanguard of a new age, a time when the master of one's craft holds as much influence as the master of the land, and tonight, in the quiet of the shop, you feel the weight and the promise of that transformation. When the sun sets behind the steep-pitched roofs of the town, the workshop falls silent, but the tavern, the true heart of urban life, begins to pulse. You walk through the heavy wooden door, the air thick with the smell of ale, roasted meat, and the dense smoky haze of a dozen pipes. This is not just a place to quench your thirst, it is a clearing-house of information. In the Tudor town, news does not travel by courier alone, it travels by mouth, carried by the men who work with their hands and hear the whispers of the world. You sit in the corner, a tankard of ale in hand, and listen. The conversation is a vibrant, chaotic tapestry. You hear a merchant from London speaking of the latest royal decree concerning trade tariffs, his voice laced with the anxiety of a man whose livelihood is tied to the whims of the court. Beside him, a travelling friar debates the nuances of the new religious reforms with a sceptical local blacksmith. These are not merely casual chats, they are the intellectual ferment of an era in flux. You realize that everyone here is trying to navigate the same shifting landscape, piecing together fragments of rumours to anticipate the future. The tavern is the one place where the rigid hierarchies of the day are temporarily smoothed over by the common need for knowledge. The apprentice rubs elbows with the master, and the farmer who has brought goods to market listens intently to the town lawyer. You are learning to read between the lines, to distinguish between the boastful talk of a traveller and the genuine observations of a seasoned merchant. You are developing a political ear, an ability to sense the direction of the wind before the gale arrives. This is how you protect yourself, by staying informed, by understanding the power structures that reach down from the throne to touch your own small corner of the world. There is a distinct tension in the air, a sense that the kingdom is holding its breath. The religious upheavals of the era are no longer distant rumours. They are changing the very laws of the land and the way your neighbours interact with the parish church. You hear accounts of monastery lands being seized and redistributed, and you debate the implications. Will this bring prosperity to the town, or will it strip away the charitable safety net that once supported the poor? You find yourself drawn into these discussions, contributing your own observations from the workshop floor. You are a citizen of this new complex reality, and your voice, though small, is part of the collective deliberation that defines the town. As you finish your ale and step out into the cool, quiet night, the weight of the information you have gathered presses upon you. The town is alive with the hum of transition, and you are no longer just a craftsman, you are a participant in the unfolding story of the nation. The tavern has given you more than just a drink, it has given you a perspective. You know that tomorrow morning, when you return to the forge or the loom, the work you do will be informed by the context you have gained tonight. You are connected, you are aware, and you are ready. The world is changing, and for the first time, you feel that you are not just a leaf being blown by the wind, but a person capable of adjusting your course to meet the challenges of the future. As the town grows wealthier and the workshops hum with more activity, a darker reality emerges in the shadows of the market streets. You cannot walk from your workshop to the tavern without passing them, the dispossessed. These are the men, women, and families who have been enclosed out of the lands their ancestors worked for centuries. They are the human cost of the wool trade's expansion, the people who have lost their foothold in the old rhythm of the village and now wander the roads, looking for a place that no longer has a place for them. The Tudor response to this phenomenon is one of profound, cold-hearted anxiety. The authorities view these wanderers not as victims of economic shifts, but as a threat to the order of the kingdom. You hear the town criers reading the new statutes, laws that criminalize poverty, that mark the sturdy beggar with brands, and that demand they return to their parish of origin, even when that parish no longer provides the means for their survival. It is a harsh, rigid, legislative response to a complex human tragedy, and it creates a climate of fear that permeates the town. There is a disturbing duality in how these people are treated. On one hand, there is the official punitive stance of the law. On the other, there is the quiet, often hidden charity of the common people. You see it in the crust of bread left on a doorstep, the bowl of pottage surreptitiously handed out by a neighbour, or the small coin dropped into a waiting hand. Despite the official fear, there remains a deep-seated folk belief that charity is a sacred duty. You struggle with this yourself, the conflict between the desire to obey the law and the instinctive human urge to offer aid to those who are suffering. This crisis of the poor changes the town. The presence of these displaced people acts as a mirror, reflecting the fragility of your own situation. You realize how quickly a turn of fortune, a failed harvest, a debt that cannot be paid, or the sudden closure of a guild shop could put you on the same road. This realization creates a sense of tenuous solidarity. You begin to see the town not just as a place of business, but as a community that is struggling to define its own morality in the face of radical change. You are not just building tools or weaving cloth, you are participating in a social experiment that is testing the limits of human empathy. As you head home in the evening, stepping around the figures huddled in the doorways, you feel a heavy, pervasive sense of unease. The progress you have celebrated in the workshops and the tavern feels incomplete when set against this backdrop of human wreckage. You know that the kingdom is becoming more orderly and more productive, but you wonder at what expense. Is the price of this new Tudor world the erosion of the communal spirit that once protected the most vulnerable among you? You look back at the quiet figures in the dark and feel a profound, troubling responsibility. The laws may call them criminals, but your conscience whispers something else. This is the challenge of your time, to reconcile the drive for national prosperity with the ancient, enduring necessity of kindness. You step inside your home, bolt the door, and for a long moment you simply listen to the silence, contemplating the lives of those who have no door to bolt against the cold. In the crowded, narrow streets of the town, where refuse gathers in the gutters and the air is thick with the soot of 100 forges, the threat of illness is a constant suffocating shadow. When the fever takes hold or a limb is mangled by a piece of heavy machinery, the physicians of the university are often far beyond your reach, and their costly remedies are written in languages you cannot understand. Here in the heart of the town, the true guardians of health are not the men in robes, but the quiet, observant individuals who hold the keys to the ancient botanical knowledge of the land. You know who they are. They are the women who keep the dried bundles of hyssop and peppermint hanging from their rafters, the elderly who know which brook provides the clay that draws out the poison from a festering wound. Their expertise is not found in the grand libraries, but in the calloused skin of their fingers, stained by the juices of crushed roots and the oils of pressed seeds. They are the practical theologians of the human body, understanding that health is a delicate negotiation between the individual and the environment. They do not claim to possess the power of miracles, they simply know how to assist the body in its own struggle to persist. There is a profound, quiet strength in their practice. When they enter your home, the air seems to settle. They bring with them a sense of order that counters the chaos of sickness. They observe, they listen, and they offer not just a tonic, but a presence. They understand that to heal the body, one must often soothe the mind, the fear of the dying, the loneliness of the convalescent. Their knowledge is a bridge between the wild, unkempt wisdom of the forest and the increasingly rigid, orderly world of the town. They are the custodians of a memory that is rapidly being forgotten by those who put their faith solely in new, imported medicines and complex, untested theories. Yet this knowledge is increasingly under siege. You hear the whispers of the authorities, the accusations of superstition, and the growing insistence that only the educated can be trusted with the care of the sick. You see these healers withdraw, becoming more cautious, more selective in whom they share their secrets with. It is a slow, agonizing loss. Every time one of these elders passes, an entire library of local flora and healing traditions vanishes with them, replaced by the standardized, often ineffective remedies prescribed by those who have never walked the fields. The town is becoming more efficient, yes, but in its quest for precision, it is losing the nuanced, empathetic connection to the rhythms of human health. As you sit in your workshop tending to a minor burn or a persistent ache with a poultice prepared by one of these local healers, you feel a surge of gratitude. You realize that your own life and the lives of those you love have been held together by this invisible, enduring web of care. It is a fragile, beautiful thing, this recognition that the earth provides not just the material for your trade, but the means to heal your body. The town may move forward into a new age of science and logic, but tonight you find comfort in the bitter, earthy smell of the herbs. They are a testament to the fact that, regardless of how complex the world becomes, the fundamental truths of life, that we suffer, that we heal, and that we are deeply, inextricably linked to the world around us, remain unchanged. You wrap the dressing a little tighter and feel a quiet, stubborn hope. The knowledge may be fading, but it is not gone yet, and as long as there is someone left who knows the secrets of the hedgerow, there is a chance for the heart of the community to keep beating. In the shadow of the parish church, a new kind of building is beginning to hold more weight than the marketplace or the guild hall, the grammar school. For generations, knowledge was the domain of the cloister or the rare elite household, but now a quiet wave of literacy is rippling through the town. You watch as your own son, or the children of your fellow craftsmen, walk through those heavy doors clutching satchels of parchment. They are entering a world where the power of the word is beginning to rival the power of the blade or the coin. Inside these walls the air is stale with the smell of aging ink and dust, but the minds within are catching fire. They are learning the Latin that opens the doors to philosophy, to history, and to the foundational texts of the ancient world. You observe the change in them even at the dinner table. They are no longer content with the simple oral histories you provide. They are beginning to question, to categorize, and to analyze. They are learning to build arguments, to manipulate language, and to perceive the world through the lens of logic. It is a transformation that is both exhilarating and deeply unsettling. This education is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it is the key to advancement. You dream that your child might become a clerk, a scholar, or perhaps even an advisor to those in power, lifting your family out of the dust of the workshop and into the sunlight of the literate elite. But on the other hand, this new knowledge creates a subtle, growing distance. They are being taught to look at the world from the top down, through the hierarchies of classical thought, while you have spent your life looking at it from the ground up, through the reality of the work itself. You sense a language barrier forming, not just of Latin, but of experience. You worry that this scholarly path will teach them to look down upon the very trades that built their opportunity. Will they see the soot on your hands as a badge of honour, or as a mark of a lower station? You struggle to reconcile their academic ambition with the grounded, physical reality that has sustained your existence. You find yourself listening to their recitations with a mixture of pride and heartache. They speak of ancient republics and divine virtues, while you know the realities of a failing crop or a guild fee that threatens to break the shop. It is a generational divide, carved into the very architecture of their new intellectual world. As the school bell rings across the town, signalling the end of the lessons, you see them spill out into the streets. Not as apprentices, but as thinkers. They carry the future in their heads, and for the first time you realize that your influence over them is fading. They will not inherit your workshop. They will inhabit a world that you helped build, but will never truly understand. You lean against the wall of your shop, watching them move toward the market square with heads held high, and you feel a profound, quiet satisfaction. You have sacrificed the repetition of your own life so that they could reach for a different one. The grammar school may be changing the soul of the town, turning it into something more complex and perhaps more volatile. But as you look at your child, you know one thing for certain: they are no longer bound by the limits of what you have done. They are the first to truly leave the past behind, and in that you find a bittersweet, enduring peace. The interior of the parish church, once a vibrant tapestry of colour, sensory wonder and sacred mystery, is changing. You step inside, and the first thing you notice is the starkness. The intricate rude screen that once separated the nave from the chancel has been dismantled. The vivid frescoes of saints and martyrs, which served as a visual Bible for those who could not read, have been painted over with a uniform, sombre white. The sensory overload of incense and Latin chant is fading, replaced by the austere clarity of the spoken vernacular. This transformation is not merely a matter of theological decree, it is a profound alteration of your emotional geography. For your parents and grandparents, the church was a bridge to the divine, filled with physical manifestations of the holy relics to touch, images to venerate, and a ritualized rhythm that provided comfort in times of despair. Now that bridge is being dismantled. You are told that the divine is found not in the ornate gold of a statue or the flickering candle of a shrine, but in the internal understanding of the scripture. It is a transition from an external communal faith to an internal solitary one. You find yourself caught in the tension of this transition. You understand the calls for a simpler, more direct connection to the divine, yet you feel a pang of genuine loss when you look at the bare whitewashed walls. The church no longer feels like the protective womb it once was. It feels more like a place of instruction where your moral failings are past and your duties are defined. The quiet awe you once felt has been replaced by a sharper, more intellectual vigilance. You are no longer just a congregant. You are a student of a faith that demands a new kind of mental discipline. This shift creates a subtle divide within the village. You see some who embrace the change with a burning revolutionary zeal, eager to tear down the symbols of the old superstition. You see others who cling to the old ways in the privacy of their homes, whispering prayers to the saints and lighting forbidden candles behind closed shutters. You find yourself navigating this divide carefully. You attend the new services, you listen to the sermons, and you engage with the new liturgy. But in the quiet corners of your mind, you still carry the weight of the old symbols. You are learning to reconcile the public, reformed identity of the Tudor subject with the private, ancestral soul that still yearns for the comfort of the familiar. As you leave the church and walk back out into the bright, indifferent light of the town, you realize that this is perhaps the deepest change of all. The Tudor period is not just reforming the state, it is reforming the individual. By stripping away the external mediators of faith, the new order is forcing you to stand alone before the divine. It is a frightening, exhilarating liberation. You are being asked to take full responsibility for your own salvation, to interpret, to understand, and to commit. As the church bell rings, a sound that no longer heralds the same rituals, you feel the immense weight of this new autonomy. You are walking into a future where the sanctuary is no longer a building, but the space within your own conscience, and for the first time you understand that the true revolution of the age is not occurring in the cathedrals or the royal courts, but in the silent private architecture of the human heart. For centuries, the horizon was a limit, a soft, blurry line where the familiar world ended and the mythic began, but now the horizon has become a doorway. News flows into the harbour with the turning tide, carried by ships that have touched lands your ancestors could not have named in their wildest dreams. You stand at the docks, watching the unloading of crates packed with silks from the east, spices that sting the air with their sharp foreign potency, and strange vibrant textiles that seem to defy the dull hues of the local wool. It is a sensory assault that signals the end of your parochial isolation. This influx of goods is accompanied by an influx of stories. The sailors with their sun-scorched skin and eyes that seem to hold the depth of the oceans sit in the taverns and spin tales of territories where the sun never sets, of people whose customs are as alien as the flora they bring back in their jars. You listen with a mix of awe and deep-seated anxiety. Each arrival feels like a tremor. The world you knew, which felt solid and eternal, is suddenly revealed to be merely a small, precarious part of a much larger, swirling map. The stability of your life is being undermined by the very scale of the discoveries taking place on the high seas. Yet there is a dark underside to this expansion. You hear the rumours that follow these ships, tales of strange virulent sicknesses that wiped out entire crews, or the unnerving reports of how the sudden influx of silver and gold is beginning to warp the value of everything you hold dear. The prices at the market fluctuate with a volatility that was unknown to your grandfather. You realize that you are no longer just subject to the local harvest. You are part of an interconnected web where a storm in the Caribbean or a war in the Mediterranean can reach out and touch the price of the grain in your own pantry. It is a chilling realization of how fragile your local security has become. This is the great Tudor paradox. The kingdom is becoming more powerful, more adventurous, and more expansive, but for the individual, the world is becoming more dangerous and less predictable. You find yourself looking at the ships with a complicated gaze. They are the engines of prosperity, bringing the wealth that allows the workshops to flourish, but they are also the vectors of a global volatility that you cannot control. You are an inhabitant of a new age, a time when the boundaries of the kingdom have been blown wide open and there is no closing them again. As you walk back from the docks, the weight of these vast unseen distances presses upon your mind. You have lived your life by the turning of the seasons, but the world is now beginning to live by the turning of the tides. You are being forced to think on a global scale, to consider the existence of millions of souls and thousands of leagues of territory that you will never see. It is a dizzying, humbling experience. You return to your home, a small, humble structure of timber and thatch, and for a moment it feels impossibly fragile against the scale of the world you have glimpsed today. But even as that fear grips you, a spark of curiosity remains, a desire to know what lies beyond that next horizon. The world has expanded, and you, for better or worse, are now a part of that grand, terrifying, and exhilarating reach. In the bustling trade district, the death of a master craftsman is often seen as the end of an enterprise, yet you have begun to witness a quiet, persistent defiance of this assumption. When the forge fire goes out or the loom stops, it is often the wife, the one who has kept the accounts, managed the inventory, and navigated the complex web of credit and debt, who steps into the vacant space. In the eyes of the guild, she is a temporary steward, a placeholder until a son comes of age or a new master is found. But in the reality of the workshop, she is the survival of the business itself. You watch her as she moves through the market, her presence a subtle disruption to the established order. Men of the guild look at her with a mixture of skepticism and discomfort. They are accustomed to negotiating with men, accustomed to the bluster and the shared language of the tavern. She, however, speaks the language of efficiency and bottom lines. She is not interested in the posturing that often masks the uncertainty of the trade. She manages the books with a meticulous hand, and it is becoming clear to those who pay attention that the business is not just surviving under her guidance, it is thriving. This is a precarious position. She walks a tightrope of social expectation, constantly proving that she is capable without being seen as threatening. She dresses with a careful, restrained modesty that signals her adherence to tradition. Yet every decision she makes is a radical act of independence. You see the subtle ways she carves out her authority, the way she negotiates prices with a sharper intuition than her husband ever possessed, or how she cultivates the loyalty of the apprentices who recognize that it is her knowledge, not just her name, that keeps their bellies full. The tension of her existence is a mirror for the changing times. The Tudor economy is demanding a level of pragmatism that is beginning to outweigh the rigid moral codes of the past. If she can produce the best quality goods and balance the accounts, the guild, however begrudgingly, finds it harder to justify removing her. She is creating a precedent, a quiet revolution in the marketplace that challenges the very foundations of gendered power. She is the living proof that competence has no gender, a fact that is as disruptive to the old guard as any theological reform or political decree. As you stand in your own shop, watching her conduct business across the street, you feel a sense of profound respect. She is navigating a world that was never designed for her to succeed, and yet she persists. She is not shouting her defiance from the town square. She is proving it in the silence of the ledgers and the quality of her output. She is an architect of the new Tudor reality, demonstrating that as the economy evolves, so too must the roles of those who sustain it. You realize that the resilience you have always admired in the women of the village is now being brought into the light of the marketplace, and it is reshaping the entire structure of the town. She is a sign of what is to come, a future where the value of a person is increasingly measured by their ability to navigate the complexities of a changing world rather than by the limitations of their place in the hierarchy. You turn back to your own work, inspired by her quiet, persistent strength, knowing that the story of your time is being written not just by the men in the courts, but by every individual, man or woman, who refuses to be defined by the boundaries of the past. For a long time, the manor court was a place where you arrived with your head bowed, waiting to receive the justice or the judgment handed down by the lord or his steward. It was a ritual of submission where the custom of the manor was an oral tradition interpreted by those in power. But the Tudor age is bringing with it a flood of paper, a growing obsession with the written word, and suddenly the power of the gavel is being challenged by the power of the document. You are learning that to hold a piece of parchment with a seal is to hold a shield against the arbitrary whims of your superiors. You see your neighbours, men who once would have simply accepted an increase in land fees or a seizure of common pasturage, now gathering in the corners of the market, whispering not of rebellion but of precedent. They are scouring old records, consulting with the growing number of legal clerks in town, and discovering that the law is not just a command from above, it is a framework that can be argued. The courtroom has become a theatre of careful, calculated debate. When you attend these sessions now, you no longer hear the swift, brutal thud of a one-sided decision. Instead, you hear the slow, deliberate language of statute and contract. This shift is fundamentally altering the identity of the town. You are becoming a litigious people, yes, but in that transformation you are also becoming a protected people. You realize that by forcing the Lord to justify his claims through the lens of established law, you are forcing him to acknowledge your existence as a stakeholder in the land. This is a subtle, agonizingly slow process of empowerment. It requires you to learn the intricate, often frustrating language of the lawyers, to understand the hierarchies of the higher courts, and to develop the patience to wait for a resolution that might take months or even years to arrive. There is a deep satisfaction in this new kind of struggle. It is a war of attrition waged with pens and signatures, a battle where your greatest weapon is your attention to detail. You find yourself spending long hours poring over old boundaries, mapping the history of your family's land, and ensuring that every agreement is documented and witnessed. It is a different kind of labour, mental, disciplined, and remarkably effective. You are no longer just a subject to be ruled. You are a participant in a legal system that is beginning to acknowledge your rights as a property holder, however small that property may be. As you sit in the dusty, crowded room of the local court, listening to a neighbour successfully contest an unfair enclosure by citing a royal charter from a century ago, you feel a surge of quiet triumph. The lord looks annoyed, the steward is flustered, and for the first time you see the cracks in the absolute authority that once seemed immutable. It is a dangerous path you are walking. To challenge the structures of power requires a steady nerve, but you have realized that the alternative is to be erased by the tides of change. You are learning to wield the law as a tool for your own survival, ensuring that the legacy you leave to your children is not just a patch of soil, but a clear, recognized right to hold it. The Tudor world is becoming more complex, more bureaucratic, and more demanding, but in the heart of the courtroom you have found a way to stand your ground, to protect your own and to assert your place in the future of the kingdom. For as long as your memory serves, the houses of your village and town were living things. They breathed, they settled, and they slowly decayed. They were structures of timber, lath, and daub, built with the expectation that they would need constant mending. But you are living in an era where this impermanence is being challenged by a new ambition. You look around and see, emerging like sturdy anchors amidst the shifting wooden skeletons, the rise of the brick and stone house. This is a profound shift in the way you perceive your existence. You are no longer just passing through time, you are beginning to build against it. The transition to brick is a quiet, expensive declaration of stability. You watch as neighbours who have saved their coin for a generation finally commission the mason. The process is slow and laborious. The kiln firing of the clay, the hauling of stone, the meticulous laying of foundations. But when the walls finally rise, they carry a weight and a permanence that feels revolutionary. These houses do not sway in the wind. They do not require the constant, nervous patching of cracked plaster. They stand as a testament to the fact that you have attained a degree of prosperity that can be measured not just in goods, but in shelter. This shift in architecture brings with it a subtle internal transformation. When you move from a house that requires constant defense against the elements to one that offers true, solid refuge, your relationship with your environment changes. You are no longer solely occupied with the immediate, desperate battle for warmth and safety. You have the breathing room to consider the interior. You see people installing glass in windows, a luxury that was once the domain of the church, and you watch as families begin to partition their spaces, creating rooms for specific purposes, a space for work, a space for cooking, and crucially, a private space for sleeping. This is the birth of the home as a private domain. The social fluidity of the old days, where the hearth was a common point for the entire village, is being replaced by a more inward-looking culture. These brick walls don't just hold the roof, they define the boundaries of your individual life. You take pride in the chimney stack that rises above your roofline, a marker of your status and your success. It is a signal to the world that you are a person of substance, a person who has earned the right to exist in a structure that will outlast your own lifetime. As you sit in your own new kitchen, the walls radiating the warmth of the hearth in a way the old wooden walls never could, you feel a deep, grounding sense of success. The Tudor world may be volatile and the winds of political and economic change may blow harder than ever, but you have built a fortress that holds firm. You are no longer just a tenant of the land or a servant of the rhythm. You are an owner of your own space. You look at the thick, solid brick of the wall and realize that you are laying the literal foundations for your children. They will grow up not in a hut of mud and straw, but in a structure of permanence. The age of the wanderer and the transient labourer is receding. The age of the householder has begun, and in the silence of this sturdy room you finally feel that you have found a place in the world that is truly, unshakably your own. In the sturdy brick-walled rooms that you have built to last, a new kind of furniture is beginning to claim the place of honour. It is not the gold plate or the intricate tapestries of the nobility, but the shelf, the bookshelf. You find yourself spending your hard-earned coin not on livestock or tools, but on the bound, printed word. These volumes, often bound in calfskin and stamped with gold, are more than just containers for stories. They are the physical manifestation of your reach. To own a library is to own a piece of the world that exists beyond your immediate experience. You watch with a mix of pride and intensity as your collection grows. You have volumes on trade, on mathematics, on the histories of Rome, and on the new challenging philosophy of the humanists. When you invite a neighbour into your study, the atmosphere changes. There is a newfound gravity. As they run their fingers over the leather spines, you are no longer just a craftsman or a local merchant. You are a man of parts, a person who possesses the keys to a wider intellectual domain. The library transforms the very function of your home, turning it from a mere dwelling into a sanctuary for the mind. This preoccupation with collecting is a subtle yet powerful shift in your social standing. In the old days, power was defined by the extent of the land you grazed or the number of hands you employed. Now it is increasingly defined by what you know and how you can deploy that knowledge. You find yourself engaged in debates that would have been impossible for your father, discussing the merits of classical rhetoric or the logistics of continental trade with an ease that surprises even you. The library is your training ground. It is where you sharpen your wit and prepare your arguments for the courthouse or the guild hall. But there is a private pleasure in this as well, the quiet, intimate hours spent by candlelight with a book that speaks to you across the centuries. You realize that while the world outside is in a state of constant, frenetic change, your books provide a steady, unchanging anchor. They contain the wisdom of those who lived through their own times of upheaval, and reading them gives you a sense of perspective that the current rumours and anxieties cannot shake. You're beginning to understand that the truest form of survival in the Tudor age is not just physical endurance, but intellectual depth. As you close a heavy volume and set it carefully back on the shelf, the firelight casting long, dancing shadows across the room, you feel a profound sense of completeness. You have built a house of brick, you have secured your rights through the law, and now you have built a temple for your thoughts. You have created a legacy that is not merely material, but enduringly intellectual. Your children will not just inherit your workshop, they will inherit your books. They will grow up in a room where the wisdom of the past is waiting to be opened, and that, you realize, is the greatest gift you could ever offer them. You have ensured that even when you are gone, your voice will continue to be heard in the quiet, reflective spaces of the home you have created. You are no longer just a cog in the wheel of the Tudor kingdom, you are a guardian of its enduring ideas. The day's labour is done, the workshop has been locked, the ledgers are closed, and the heavy door of your home is bolted against the dusk, but the house is not silent. In this era of rising prosperity and growing intellectual depth, you find that you have room for something that was once an indulgence of the aristocracy, the cultivation of beauty. You reach for the lute, its wooden frame warm from the hearth, and as you strike the first resonant chords, the atmosphere of the room undergoes a subtle, magical transformation. The stresses of the guild, the anxieties of the changing market, and the weight of your civic duties simply fade. This is the birth of domestic music. In your grandfather's time, music was a communal, public affair, a frantic dance in the village square, or a solemn hymn in the church. But now it is becoming an intimate household art. You sit with your children, who have learned to pluck the strings or blend their voices in complex polyphonic arrangements. There is a profound, quiet dignity in this. You're not just teaching them how to work or how to argue the law. You're teaching them how to appreciate the harmony of a well-ordered life. You are shaping their souls, ensuring that they have a sanctuary of grace to retreat into when the world outside grows too harsh. Music has become the language of your newfound interiority. When you play, you are not merely reproducing notes, you are interpreting the complex, often dissonant reality of the Tudor world and bringing it into a temporary, perfect alignment. The beauty of a consort where several instruments weave together in a single, coherent tapestry is a powerful metaphor for what you wish for your family and your town. It is a reminder that even when voices are distinct, even when the times are changing, there is a possibility for unity and order. It is a practice of patience, of precision, and of profound reflective listening. You realize that this, too, is a form of survival. The Tudor age is one of rapid transformation and often bewildering instability, but music offers a space where you are in total control of the environment. You create the rhythm, you determine the pace. In these hours of evening practice, you are the master of your own time. You are not beholden to the royal court, the guild hierarchy, or the shifting demands of the merchant class. You are simply a human being experiencing the transcendent joy of sound. It is a rebellion of the spirit against the relentless ticking of the clock. As the final note dies away, lingering in the air of the room like a fading ember, a profound silence settles over the house. It is not the empty silence of a room that has been ignored, but the full, resonant silence of a space that has been filled with meaning. You look at your children, their faces softened by the music, and you see that they are learning a truth that no textbook can provide, that a successful life is not just one of wealth or status, but one of balance. You pack the instrument away with a gentle, reverent hand. You're ready for the morning, ready for the toil, and ready for the challenges of a new day. You have found the secret of the Tudor world, that while the tides of history may be rising, you can always find a melody to steady your heart and keep your spirit in tune with the beauty that lies beneath the surface of all things. The evening is cool, and the fire in the hearth crackles with a steady, comforting rhythm. This is the time when the walls of the workshop, the legal debates of the court, and the complexities of the ledger seem distant. Tonight the conversation is different. It is not about the price of wool or the wording of a contract. It is about the future of your daughter, or perhaps your son, and the delicate, often tumultuous matter of their hearts. In this house of brick and books, you have created a space where their voices are no longer just an echo of your own. For generations, marriage was a transaction, a strategic alliance of land, craft, and reputation. Your own life may have been shaped by such practical considerations, and you have always viewed this as the cornerstone of family survival. But as you look at your children who have been educated in the grammar schools, who read the poets, and who have grown up in a house filled with both music and independent thought, you realize that their expectations have shifted. They speak not just of stability, but of companionship, not just of a suitable match, but of a shared understanding of the world. It is a terrifying yet exhilarating realization. You listen as they speak of their hopes, and you find yourself wrestling with the instinct to protect them from the vulnerabilities of a love match. You know that the world is cold, and that financial security is the only true fortress against it. Yet, as they articulate their desires, you see the reflection of your own hidden youthful dreams, the parts of you that were sacrificed to the necessity of building this family's future. You realize that by giving them the education and the freedom to think, you have also given them the autonomy to choose, and that this choice may not align with the rigid strategies of your own generation. This dialogue is the most difficult labor you have ever undertaken. It requires you to set aside your pride and your pragmatism, and to listen to them as individuals who possess their own distinct visions of a life well lived. You find yourself explaining the harsh realities of the Tudor world, the pressures of the guild, the expectations of the community, and the fragile nature of economic status, not to control them, but to provide them with the context they need to make their own decisions. You are no longer the master of their destiny. You are their counselor, their anchor, and their witness. As the conversation draws to a close and the fire burns down to a soft, pulsating glow, you feel a deep sense of relief. You have not arrived at a definitive solution, but you have arrived at something far more important, a mutual recognition of their humanity. You see that they are capable of navigating the path ahead, that they have inherited your resilience, but have chosen to apply it to the cultivation of their own happiness. You realize that the greatest legacy you can leave is not just the house, the books, or the business, but the ability for them to determine their own course in a world that is spinning faster every day. You stand up, lay a hand on their shoulder in a silent gesture of blessing, and for the first time you feel completely at peace with the changing tide of the times. The future will be theirs to craft, and for all the uncertainties it holds, you are profoundly proud of the people they have become. In the narrow, soot-stained alleyways of the town, there exists a place that hums with a vibration unlike any other. It is the print shop. Here, the heavy, rhythmic clank of the wooden press is the heartbeat of a new age. You have visited it often, drawn by the smell of damp paper and biting ink, and each time you step across the threshold you feel as though you are entering the very engine room of history. This is where the fleeting thoughts of poets, the radical arguments of theologians, and the dry proclamations of the crown are hardened into permanent, transportable reality. The master printer is a man of nervous energy and sharp intellect. He knows that his trade is a dangerous one. He lives in a world of royal licenses, censorship, and the ever-present threat of being shuttered if he dares to put the wrong words to paper. Yet he continues to pull the lever, driven by a belief that is shared by everyone who values the printed page, that once an idea is in print, it can never be truly suppressed. You watch him as he inspects a freshly printed leaf, the ink still wet and shimmering, and you realize that he is not just a craftsman, he is a revolutionary, though he would likely never call himself one. This shop has changed the way you view your own town. Every week a new pamphlet appears on the market stalls, a ballad about a distant naval battle, a moral treatise on the virtues of thrift, or a searing critique of current taxation. These scraps of paper have a life of their own. They travel from the hands of the merchant to the pocket of the farmer, moving across the countryside and planting seeds of debate in places where, only a decade ago, news moved exclusively by word of mouth. The speed of information is accelerating, and you find yourself constantly struggling to keep pace, to verify, to interpret, and to respond. You realize that the print shop has effectively created a new invisible guild, a brotherhood of readers. You are part of it. When you purchase a pamphlet, you are engaging in a silent dialogue with the author, and by sharing that pamphlet with a neighbour, you are becoming a link in a chain of intellectual transmission that spans the entire kingdom. The print shop has turned the town into a forum. The isolation that once defined rural life is being dissolved by the relentless production of these sheets. You are no longer just a resident of a small market town, you are a citizen of an expanding literate public sphere. As you walk away from the print shop, a newly minted almanac tucked under your arm, you feel the weight of what is happening. The power to define the world, to tell the history of the Tudor reign, to debate the nature of the divine, to broadcast the laws of the realm, has been shifted from the pulpit and the throne into the hands of those who own the press. You feel a sense of exhilarating vertigo. The world is being reconstructed in ink. It is a fragile, messy, and incredibly vibrant process, and you are right at the center of it. You look up at the street ahead, and for a moment it feels as if the very air is thick with the potential of 1,000 unread stories. You are part of the first generation to truly inhabit a world where the word is as real as the stone, and as you head home you are already thinking of what you will read and what you will debate by the fire tonight. For generations your day was governed by the sky. You rose with the light, you broke for the midday meal when the shadows were shortest, and you rested when the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a fluid, organic existence, intimately tied to the temperamental rhythms of the earth. But in the town square a new giant has taken root, the clock tower. Its face is a flat, unblinking eye, and its sound, a heavy, metallic tolling that reverberates through the streets, has become the new master of your existence. You are no longer living by the sun, you are living by the gear. The clock does not care about the weather, the harvest, or the exhaustion of the human body. It marks the hour with a cold, relentless precision that demands your obedience. You find yourself glancing at your own small portable timepiece, a recent and expensive acquisition, with a frequency that borders on obsession. Every task in your workshop is now measured against the steady, relentless ticking. You calculate your output by the hour, you pay your apprentices by the hour, and you find that your own sense of self-worth is increasingly tied to the efficiency of your labour. The clock has turned time into a commodity, a scarce resource that must be harnessed, accounted for, and never wasted. This change is subtly eroding the ancient communal patience of the village. The tavern, once a place where one lingered for as long as the conversation required, now has a different atmosphere. People check their watches, they have schedules to keep, appointments to meet, and tasks that must be completed before the bell strikes. You feel a constant low-level hum of anxiety, a sense that you are perpetually racing against the mechanism. You have become more productive, certainly, but you have also lost the capacity to simply exist within the moment, undisturbed by the requirement to be somewhere else. Yet there is a strange, intoxicating power in this new control. By mastering the clock, you feel as though you are mastering the world. You can plan the coming weeks with a confidence that would have been alien to your father, who lived at the mercy of the day's whim. You can synchronize your labor with merchants and suppliers, creating a seamless, interconnected web of trade that moves with the speed of an advancing army. The clock has allowed you to extend your reach, to impose your will upon the world, and to transform the chaotic, unpredictable flow of existence into a structured, manageable sequence of events. As you stand in the quiet of your workshop late in the evening, listening to the synchronized, rhythmic ticking of a dozen clocks on your wall, you realize that you have traded the freedom of the seasons for the freedom of the schedule. The clock has liberated you from the uncertainty of nature, but it has shackled you to the tyranny of the machine. You look at your hands, calloused and tired, and you wonder, is this efficiency the true path to progress, or have you simply built a more elegant prison? You do not have the answer, but as the clock strikes the hour, you instinctively move to the next task on your list. The rhythm has become second nature, and even if you wanted to stop, you no longer know how to live any other way. You are a citizen of the clockwork age, and there is no turning back. Your life, much like the meticulously preserved volumes upon your oak shelves, is not a straight line, but an intricate weave of choices. As you stand by the window looking out over the Tudor town, resting quietly under the moonlight, you realize that you are not merely a witness, you are a creator. You have traversed the distance from a life governed entirely by the rhythms of the earth to an age of mechanical precision, from the simple, communal certainties of old to the introspective complexity of the modern individual, from the quietude of oral tradition to the long, contemplative nights spent with books by the fire. The transformation of your life is the transformation of the kingdom itself. The anxieties of the plague, the heated religious debates, and the harsh realities of the poor laws have all carved you into the person you are today. You have lost much, the innocence of your beginnings, the fragile stillness of the old timber cottages, and the unquestioning comfort of a collective existence. But in return, you have found something far more precious, the power of understanding. You have learned to defend your land through the law, to nourish your mind through your library, and to find tranquility in the polyphonic harmony of your family's music. As you look back at these chapters, the memories of the master printer, the resilient widow, the children of the grammar school, you realize that you were never alone in this journey. You are a strand in a greater wave that is forever reshaping the face of the realm. You have lived, fought, loved, and recorded it all. Your journals, your detailed notes on life, trade, and etiquette will not vanish. They have become your legacy. You have taught your children that prosperity lies not merely in the gold within a chest, but in the ability to command one's own fate in a world that never stops changing. Now, as the night settles over the town, you no longer feel the unease of a stranger caught in the currents of history. You have become part of them. You understand that you are the vital link between a rustic past and a promising, albeit uncertain, future. You close your journal, set down your quill, and feel a profound sense of satisfaction. The footprints you have left upon the cobbled streets will eventually be worn away by time, but the concepts you have forged of freedom, of responsibility, and of compassion will echo on. You have lived fully within the breath of the Tudor age. You were not swept away. You steered your own vessel through the rising tides. When tomorrow's sun rises, the clock tower will toll again, not to urge you forward in anxious haste, but to welcome you into a new day of opportunity. You have completed your chapter, but history continues to turn its pages, and in your heart a quiet faith remains. No matter how the world spins, as long as you keep the hearth fire lit, the books on the shelf, and trust in the human spirit, you will always find your way home. Sleepy History with Kevin is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep. Thank you for your understanding and support.